The government is discussing plans for supermarkets to introduce a cap on the price of basic food items to help tackle the rising cost of living. A voluntary agreement with major retailers could see price reductions on basic food items like bread and milk. Food prices rose by 19.1% in the year to April, its second highest rate in 45 years. Downing Street sources have stressed that there are no plans for a mandatory price cap. The idea of a cap or freeze on basic food items, as first reported by the Daily Telegraph, is said to be at the drawing board stage. Supermarkets are expected to be allowed to select which items they would cap and only take part in the initiative, modelled on a similar agreement in France on a voluntary basis. At a meeting with food manufacturers last week, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt stressed widespread concern about prices and agreed to engage with the industry on possible measures to ease pressure on household budgets. Mr Hunt has said he would back an increase in interest rates if it curbed higher prices and soaring inflation, even if that risked plunging the UK into recession. The rate of inflation can be calculated in various ways, but the main measure is the Consumer Prices Index, which tracks the prices of everyday items in an imaginary basket of goods. The last figure for CPI was 8.7% in the year to April, down from 10.1% in March and 11.1% in October. Soaring prices of food products has meant inflation has not come down by as much as many predicted. Experts have warned that expensive food is set to overtake energy bills as the epicenter of the cost of living crisis. Luton Town goal-scorer Jordan Clark said boss Rob Edwards had told them to win the Championship playoff final for Tom Locker after the defender collapsed in the opening stages of the match. The Hatters captain, aged 28, was taken straight to hospital, where he was pictured celebrating in his bed after his teammates won a penalty shootout. Clark told Sky Sports the gaffer said we had done it for him. Edwards said it felt a little bit wrong to celebrate. Luton were a non-league team just 9 years ago, and their victory over Coventry took them back into the top division for the first time since 1992. But the day had begun in a worrying fashion as they lost Lockyer in just the 8th minute, the Wales international falling to the turf and having to be taken off on a stretcher. Despite losing their captain, the Hatters went in front through Clark's first half strike, but Coventry forced extra time when the Gustavo Hammer equalised on 66 minutes. Neither team could find a way through in extra time before a high-quality shootout ended with Coventry's Venkati Darbo shooting over. Speaking soon after victory was secured, Edwards told BBC Three Counties Radio he was only thinking about Lockyer. He later told Sky Sports, "I just felt emotional. I feel for Locks, who has been our best player this year." Dan Potts, who wore the captain's armband as he scored Luton's 6th penalty, said he was gutted for Lockyer. He deserved to be there holding that trophy, he added. Town have been practising penalties throughout their playoff campaign, and goalkeeper Ethan Hovarth said he had no doubt they would win the shootout. "We're a brotherhood and we're all behind each other," he told Sky Sports. "We needed everybody together." The Hatters chief executive Gary Sweet told BBC Three Counties Radio, "This is not the end of the Luton fairy tale," saying we're not finished yet. Sweet's Luton Town 2020 consortium bought the club in 2008, when he says it was close to being completely liquidated. 15 years on, Luton will welcome teams such as Manchester City, Manchester United, Arsenal and Liverpool to their 10,356 capacity Kenilworth Road Stadium. "I am numb with joy," said Sweet. "I cannot believe it. We are here where we wanted to be. History. I never believed that the club would die or believed the town would die. I was determined never to let that happen. We're on the up. We haven't finished. This is not the last chapter." Clark said Kenilworth Road was an unbelievable place, adding, "I can't wait to play there next season with this group of lads. It's such a tight-knit group and a pleasure to be here." Club legend Mick Harford, a former Luton player and manager, told BBC 3CR that returning to the top division capped an unbelievable story. "It's probably one of the best things to happen in my life," he said. "I was in tears at the end. We're at the promised land and we fully deserved it. I look forward to the challenge of the Premier League." The Home Office is launching an ad campaign targeting Albanian nationals to deter them from migrating to the UK. The adverts, which will run in Albanian on Facebook and Instagram, will warn that people will face being detained and removed if they make the journey. The government said the campaign, starting next week, would make clear the perils migrants on small boats face. Labour said the move beggars belief and the asylum system was in chaos. According to the Home Office, Albania is a safe and prosperous country, and many nationals are travelling through multiple countries to make the journey to the UK before making spurious asylum claims when they arrive. The campaign follows a similar social media drive launched by the government in August last year. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick said the campaign would work proactively at the source before people set off on dangerous and unnecessary journeys. Albania was the most common nationality applying for asylum in the UK in the year to March 2023, with 13,714 applications by Albanian citizens. Mr. Jenrick said, "We are determined to stop the boats, and the campaign, launching in Albania this week, is just one component of the Home Office's work upstream to help dispel myths about illegal travel to the UK, explain the realities and combat the lies peddled by evil people smugglers who profit from this vile trade." The government would not say how much the publicity drive is expected to cost. Tim Hilton, Chief Executive of Refugee Action, called the campaign pointless and said it repeats the myth that refugee migration is illegal. He said this is yet another pointless campaign that shows ministers refuse to understand that a small minority of the world's refugees have very powerful reasons to come here. If the government wanted to smash the smuggling gangs and stop people crossing the channel in flimsy boats, it would create more safe routes for refugees to travel here to claim asylum. Chief Executive of refugee charity Care for Calais, Steve Smith, said no amount of taxpayer-funded PR spin will deter refugees from seeking a safer future. Refugees have experienced some of the worst things imaginable, from war and conflict to torture and human rights abuses. The only solution that will put people smugglers out of business, stop small boat crossings and save lives is to offer safe passage to refugees with a viable asylum claim in the UK. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said it beggars belief that as channel crossings continue to rise and the asylum system is in chaos, all the Conservatives can come up with is to stop the criminal gangs is an ad campaign. At every turn, the Tories' so-called solutions fail to meet the scale of the crisis. All they are doing is tinkering at the edges. The campaign follows the government's illegal migration bill, which aims to send asylum seekers who arrive in Britain via unauthorised routes back home or to a third country such as Rwanda. Ministers also hope the legislation will cut the daily £5.5 million cost of housing migrants who make it to the UK. The bill, currently in the House of Lords, has faced backlash from public figures and campaigners, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, who argue that it is both unworkable and morally unacceptable. Four MPs are being asked to repay hundreds of pounds in driving fines which they claimed on expenses. Government Minister Amanda Soloway claimed an £80 fixed penalty notice issued by Transport for London in 2020. Tory MPs Simon Hoare and Bim Afolami and SNP MP Dave Dugan also put through similar claims. MPs are not allowed to claim for fines, and some were wrongly paid out, but at least one MP is understood to have already paid back the money. Miss Soloway, Derby North MP and Energy Minister, claimed back a fixed penalty notice which was issued on the 2nd of July 2020, according to the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority's IPSA Expenses Register. Mr Dugan, SNP MP for Angus, claimed for a £160 fine in January 2022. The register also shows Mr Hoare, MP for North Dorset, claimed 4 times for £80 fines issued in November 2019, while Mr Afolami, MP for Hitchin and Harpenden, claimed for two £80 fines in December 2021. The 4 cases were initially uncovered in an investigation by The Independent. In a statement, Mr Afolami said it was completely inadvertent, all money repaid the moment that I knew about it. Ms Soloway, Mr Hoare and Mr Dugan have been approached for comment. IPSA rules state that claims for penalty charges will not be paid to MPs. The watchdog, which is also responsible for setting MPs' pay independent of Parliament, said that it has changed its expenses process to ensure any future claims will not be paid out. IPSA's checks failed in some cases to identify these claims, and some of them were paid. We will contact MPs and ask them to repay where appropriate, a spokesman said. We have changed our process to ensure any future such claims are not paid and will reiterate the scheme rules to MPs. The spokesman added that the congestion charge can be claimed by MPs from outside London who drive into central London for work, but that would not extend to an approval for expenses claims fines that are incurred if the congestion charge is not paid on time. It comes days after Prime Minister Rishi Sunak decided not to launch an inquiry into Home Secretary Suella Braverman's handling of a speeding offence. Miss Braverman was caught speeding last year while she was Attorney General and asked officials for advice on arranging a private course to avoid penalty points on her licence. She later accepted a fine and points. IPSA was established in 2009 after the scandal over MPs' expenses. A zoo that became famous when its chimpanzees starred in PG Tips adverts is celebrating its 60th anniversary. Twycross Zoo in Leicestershire was founded on the 26th of May 1963 by business partners Molly Badham and Natalie Evans. The zoo said the pair were the only female zoo founders in the UK at that time. It plans to mark the anniversary throughout half-term with a 1960s themed birthday event. The zoo's founders were initially business rivals, both running pet shops in Sutton Coldfield in the 1940s. After the pair joined forces, they opened a zoo near Tamworth, Staffordshire, before moving to the current site. The pair gained fame in the 1950s when they allowed their chimpanzees to appear in television adverts for PG Tips tea. Conservation projects were funded from money from the ads, and it also enabled the creation of ape stud books, used for safe breeding of gibbons and chimps. The zoo is now home to one of the largest primate collections in Europe. It plans to run events during half-term to mark the event, including entertainment and craft activities. It said people born in that year can, upon presentation of valid ID, enjoy a free visit for a limited time. The zoo also plans to run an exhibition about its history and founders, including memorabilia, archive footage, photos and a short film. Helena Wimbush, head of communication at the zoo, said, "We're delighted to have marked our 60th anniversary. As a conservation charity, we are committed to inspiring and educating our visitors about the challenges on our planet faces and the practical actions we can all take to protect it. Throughout May half-term, we will celebrate our 60-year history and also look forward to the next 60 years of Twycross Zoo, and we hope as many visitors as possible can join us to be part of the celebrations." Seven men have been charged with the attempted murder of Senior Police Service of Northern Ireland PSNI Detective John Caldwell. Detective Chief Inspector Caldwell was shot in front of his young son at a sports complex in Oman, County Tyrone on the 22nd of February. 2 of the men are aged 28 and 5 of the other men are aged 33, 38, 45, 47 and 72. All 7 men are expected to appear before Dungannon Magistrates Court on Monday. The PSNI says the 38 and 45-year-olds are also charged with membership of a proscribed organisation, namely the IRA. Officers have previously stated they believe the dissident Republican group, the new IRA, may have had a role in the attack. 3 of the men aged 28, 33 and 47 have also been charged with preparation of terrorist acts. The 7 men were arrested on Friday along with 4 others, 2 men and 2 women. Those 4 were released earlier on Saturday by police, pending a report to the Public Prosecution Service, PPS. Detective Chief Inspector Caldwell, who had just finished coaching youth football when he was shot, sustained life-changing injuries. The attack was widely condemned by political figures across Northern Ireland and beyond. Detective Chief Inspector Caldwell was visited by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak during his treatment. He was discharged from hospital in April. The detectives made his first appearance since then at Hillsborough Castle on Wednesday, where he had an audience with the King. Holly Willoughby has said it was very hurtful to discover her former co-host Philip Schofield lied to her about his affair with a younger colleague. On Friday, Schofield confirmed he had a relationship with a younger male ITV employee while still married. In a statement, Willoughby said, "When reports of this relationship first surfaced, I asked Phil directly if this was true and was told it was not. It's been very hurtful to now find out that this was a lie." Writing on Instagram, Willoughby added it had taken time to process yesterday's news. The pair presented ITV daytime show This Morning together for 14 years, until Schofield's exit last week. Schofield then quit ITV on Friday, after admitting to the affair with the man, which he described as unwise but not illegal. Some former ITV daytime figures, such as Eamon Holmes and Dan Wootton, said the revelations raised questions about how much the network's managers knew about the relationship. ITV responded on Saturday by saying it had investigated rumours of a relationship between Schofield and a younger employee in 2020, but that both had repeatedly denied it. An ITV spokesman said further to our statement last night, ITV can confirm that when rumours of a relationship between Philip Schofield and an employee of ITV first began to circulate in early 2020, ITV investigated. Both parties were questioned and both categorically and repeatedly denied the rumours, as did Philip's then agency YMU. In addition, ITV spoke to a number of people who worked on This Morning and were not provided with and did not find any evidence of a relationship beyond hearsay and rumour. Philip's statement yesterday reveals that he lied to people at ITV, from senior management to fellow presenters, to Schofield's agents, YMU, to the media and to others over this relationship. Schofield confessed to the affair in a statement to the Daily Mail on Friday, saying, "I did have a consensual on-off relationship with a younger male colleague at This Morning. He was still married to his wife Stephanie Lowe at the time. They separated in 2020 after he came out as gay." Schofield said he was so very, very sorry for being unfaithful to his wife and for lying to his colleagues, agents, employers, friends, the media, the public and his family about the relationship. He continued, "Contrary to speculation, whilst I met the man when he was a teenager and was asked to help him to get into television, it was only after he started to work on the show that it became more than just a friendship." He also said he would reflect on my very bad judgment in both participating in the relationship and then lying about it. It followed rumours circulating on social media over several months about Schofield's personal relationships. The 61-year-old's exit from ITV means he will no longer present the British Soap Awards next month. He will also not front a new primetime series, which the network originally said last week they were developing with him. Dermot O'Leary, who has been covering for Schofield on This Morning since his exit, declined to discuss the matter on Saturday.
Oh,
I'm doing stuff in here, Mum. Anyway.
sorry.
"I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment, especially without any knowledge," he told reporters outside BBC Radio 2, where he presents a weekend show. Schofield left his role at This Morning last week following reports of a rift with co-star Willoughby. He had presented the ITV show since 2002, with Willoughby joining him as a co-presenter in 2009. In a statement on Friday, Schofield said his departure from This Morning was unrelated to the affair with a colleague who the BBC is not naming. His final appearance on the programme was on Thursday 18th of May, before he announced his departure from the show that weekend. Cover presenters Hammond and O'Leary paid tribute to Schofield at the start of Monday's programme. Willoughby is currently taking time off from the show, but is set to return to presenting duties on Monday 5th of June. Talent agency YMU has also cut ties with Schofield following his announcement about the affair. In a statement to the BBC, Schofield said, "It is with the most profound regret that after 35 years of being faultlessly managed by YMU, I've agreed to step down from their representation with immediate effect." In May, his brother Timothy Schofield was jailed for 12 years after being found guilty of sexually abusing a boy. Lee Wood gained revenge on Mauricio Lara by unanimous points decision as he regained the WBA featherweight title with an impressive display. Lara, aged 25, stopped the 35-year-old Englishman in February, but vacated the belt on Friday after failing to make weight for this rematch in Manchester. The Mexican's sluggish movements were in contrast to the clever, dominant performance of Wood. Wood knocked down Lara in round 2 and never looked in trouble thereafter. The judges record it as 118 to 109, 106 to 111, and 118 to 109 in his favour. "I should have done that first time round," Wood told BBC Radio 5 Live. "He's tricky. If you switch off, he will put your lights out. I was so focused, so driven, I was never going to fail no matter what." Wood was the only fighter at AO Arena who could leave with the belt. Had the Mexican won, the title would have been left vacant. However, Wood never looked likely to have given up the opportunity to reclaim the belt he first won in July 2021, as he made amends for the previous defeat to Lara when he looked on top before being stopped in the 7th round. Wood had clearly learned his lessons, putting on a much more defensively secure and technically assured performance. Lara, meanwhile, looked to run out of ideas early on, and despite a 4-pound weight advantage and facing an opponent who had gone through a weight cut, he rarely troubled his opponent. The tempo was set in round 2, when a right uppercut instantly followed by a short left saw Wood knock his opponent to the canvas. Lara got up quickly, but was now on the back foot, and never recovered his composure as a partisan crowd roared on Nottingham-born Wood. Wood continued to attack with big punches right and left, and not even a cut suffered near his left eye in round 4 could stop his flow. That cut did become more of an issue and had to be tended to by his corner. However, it was ruled to have been caused by an accidental clash of heads, so the fight would have been decided by scorecard if it had resulted in a stoppage, and Wood always looked ahead. The final 6 rounds saw Wood keep Lara at arm's length, with stabs to the body causing the Mexican particular issues. At the final bell, Wood immediately raced to salute the crowd, before calling for a homecoming fight at Nottingham Forest Football Stadium. "It's amazing. There's only one thing that can top it, and that's fighting at home at City Ground," he told DAZN. "It'll be the next one or the one after." Into his mid-30s, Wood admitted he only has a limited number of top-level bouts remaining, and wants to hit all his dream targets before he is done. He called out Luis Alberto Lopez for a unification bout after the Mexican stopped Michael Conlan in his own backyard of Belfast earlier on Saturday night in their IBF featherweight encounter. Wood also said he would be keen to face Josh Warrington. However, fighting at Forest Ground is the big one. "I probably have 2 fights left, City Ground 1 unification, and I want my happy ending," he said. Radio 1 have announced 30 Seconds to Mars will return to perform at Big Weekend hours after the band cancelled their set. Fans were informed 30 minutes after Saturday's scheduled performance that a technical issue meant the group would not be playing in Dundee, but in a tweet Radio 1 have said they will now play on Sunday morning. That will be on the Future Sound stage instead of the main stage as initially planned. The station says it understands Saturday ticket holders will be disappointed, but it hopes that they can enjoy the show online. In the initial announcement on stage, people were told that organisers and the band had tried their best, but that a performance would not be possible. A message was also shown on the big screens informing fans of the cancellation. Caitlin and Jenna, both aged 21, drove up from Newcastle to attend Big Weekend on Saturday. "I do feel bad for people that are working behind the scenes," says Jenna. "A lot of people take time and effort to put into this stuff. At this stage you've got so many people that I think any technical difficulties should have been resolved before anyone comes to the stage. We didn't really know what was going on," Caitlin says. We were looking forward to it, but nothing happened. It was nearly time for the next act before somebody came on and told us that they were being cancelled, Jenna adds. Callum Edwards, aged 28, was also keen to see the band. Like Caitlin and Jenna, he's doubtful about the reason of technical difficulties. There's clearly a mic working, so I'd be happy for them to just come out with guitar and just perform something. So it's a bit rubbish, to be honest. I don't know what they had in store, but there's a mic and you can sing. But Caitlin and Jenna are still determined to enjoy their festival. Caitlin says there are other acts and both her and Jenna will have an amazing time. It's a shame, but at the end of the day, the night is young and it will still be good. Emily Morgan, the health and science editor for ITV News, whose career at the channel spanned more than 2 decades, has died aged 45. The mother of 2 was recently diagnosed with lung cancer and passed away on Friday night, surrounded by her family, ITV said. She led ITV's coronavirus coverage, reporting from hospitals. We are devastated at the passing of our remarkable colleague, Emily Morgan, ITN posted on Twitter. Emily was a hugely talented journalist and a much-loved friend and mentor to so many here. She'll be greatly missed. Our thoughts are with Emily's family. Miss Morgan took great pride in her work, but told colleagues she wished to be remembered as a mother, wife, sister, daughter and friend, ITV said. ITV News editor Andrew Dagnall said Emily was an exceptional journalist, a devoted mother and wife, and a true trailblazer in their field. Her friendship, her professionalism and her enormous contribution to our industry and to the public conversation will not be forgotten. Among others paying tribute were Health Secretary Steve Barclay, who tweeted, "Her exemplary reporting throughout the COVID pandemic was a vital public service, helping to keep people safe." Chris Shipp, royal editor for ITV News, said his colleague and dear friend had been full of humanity. BBC Breakfast editor Richard Fredania, who used to work for ITV News, called her a first-class journalist. He tweeted, "Brilliant, talented, intelligent, dedicated and fearless. Emily Morgan will always remain in the hearts of all those lucky enough to have worked with her." A Lego model of the Lake District is to be displayed on location. The structure, which measures more than 100 square foot or 9.2 square metres, includes replicas of Buttermere, Borrowdale and Derwent Water. John Tordoff built the model at his cottage in Milford, Derbyshire during the pandemic and has since used more than 200,000 Lego bricks. It will go on display in Windermere in the Lake District in July. What began as a hobby in lockdown has turned into an ongoing artwork. I'm not sure it will ever end, Mr. Tordoff said. The artist initially set out to recreate his favourite spot, Buttermere, but the model has since grown across 69 boards and now expands as far as Keswick. Mr. Tordoff has now set his sights on building the mountain Great Gable. Hundreds of people came to see the replica when it was displayed at Belper Library in Derbyshire in January. It is expected even more people will visit when it is exhibited at the Windermere Jetty Museum between the 1st of July and the 8th of October. Mr. Tordoff said he was delighted his creation has found a temporary home in the lakes. "It's a beautiful setting with views of the hills beyond Windermere," he said. "I hope it will inspire people to get out on the fells this summer and experience the Lake District." Lakeland Arts, the arts and heritage charity that runs Windermere Jetty Museum, said it was thrilled to showcase the model. Lego building workshops and activities will also be available for museum visitors inspired by Mr. Tordoff's work. The model will also be on display this bank holiday weekend in the Craft Village at Markeaton Park in Derby. President Joe Biden and his Republican opponents have announced they have agreed in principle to raise the US debt ceiling and avert a default. President Joe Biden described the agreement as a compromise, while House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said it was worthy of the American people. The deal, after weeks of bitter renegotiations, still needs to be approved by a divided Congress. The Treasury has warned the US will run out of money on the 5th of June without a deal. The US must borrow money to fund the government because it spends more than it raises in taxes. Republicans have been seeking spending cuts in areas such as education and other social programs in exchange for raising the $31.4 trillion or £25 trillion debt limit. Details of the tentative deal have not officially been released, but CBS, the BBC's partner in the US, reported that non-defence government spending would be kept flat for 2 years and then rise by 1% in 2025. It was unclear how exactly a government programme that provides food purchasing assistance for people on low or no incomes would change. In a statement, President Joe Biden described the agreement as a compromise, which was good for the country because it prevents what could have been a catastrophic default and would have led to an economic recession, retirement accounts devastated, and millions of jobs lost. Mr. McCarthy, for his part, referred to historic reductions in spending, consequential reforms that will lift people out of poverty into the workforce. There are no new taxes, no new government programs, he said. Mr. McCarthy added that he planned to finish writing the bill on Sunday before having a vote in Congress on Wednesday. A US default would upend the US economy and disrupt global markets. In the US, the immediate effect would be that the government would quickly run out of funds to pay for welfare benefits and other support programs, for instance. Over a long period, the crisis would top the US economy into recession, and this would result in unemployment rising. A US recession would have big knock-on effects for many countries around the world, for which the US is a key trading partner. They would not be able to sell to an economy that does not buy as much. And because the US dollar is the reserve currency of the world, a default would send panic across the world, eventually leading to prices of many commodities rising. The Post Office has apologised for using racist terms to describe postmasters wrongly investigated as part of the Horizon IT scandal. An internal document shows fraud investigators were asked to group suspects based on racial features. More than 700 sub-postmasters were prosecuted for false accounting based on information from a flawed system. The scandal has been described as the most widespread miscarriage of justice in UK history. The guidance, which is reportedly published between 2008 and 2011, required investigators to give sub-postmasters under suspicion a number according to their racial background. The numbered categories on the document include Chinese/Japanese types, dark-skinned European types, and people of some variation of African descent. An archaic and offensive term for the colonial era of the 1800s that refers to people of the African descent. I won't be mentioning the name. A Post Office spokesperson described it as a historic document, but said the organisation did not tolerate racism in any shape or form and condemned the abhorrent language. We fully support investigations into Post Office past wrongdoings and believe the Horizon IT inquiry will help ensure today's Post Office has the confidence of its postmasters and the communities it supports, the spokesman added. The document was discovered as part of a Freedom of Information request from a campaigner supporting the more than 700 branch managers who were prosecuted between 1999 and 2015 on theft, fraud and false accounting charges. Adeep Sethi's parents used to run 2 post office branches near Romford in Essex, but they fell victim to the Horizon computer system that was installed by the Post Office from 2001 and frequently made errors that made it look like money was going missing. Speaking to BBC Radio 4's Today programme, he said his family were not surprised by the revelation about the use of racist language in the investigation, as it had been becoming a drip feed of scandal after scandal. This was from a Freedom of Information request and not the Post Office coming out and saying, "We've messed up, it was only because someone dug into it," he said. The charges were based on information from the recently installed computer system Horizon, which was later found to have flaws. Horizon was introduced into the Post Office network from 1999. The system, developed by the Japanese company Fujitsu, was used for tasks such as transactions, accounting and stock taking. Sub-postmasters complained about bugs in the system after it reported shortfalls, some of which amounted to many thousands of pounds. Some went into prisons following convictions of false accounting and theft, while others were financially ruined. Dozens of convictions have since been overturned, and many sub-postmasters are in line for compensation. Mortgage costs are rising after higher than expected inflation figures this week raised forecasts of how much UK interest rates will go up. A range of lenders have increased the cost of new deals, with Nationwide the most significant, with increases of up to 0.45 percentage points on Friday. It comes amid expectations the Bank of England will have to raise interest rates higher than previously thought. Yet the activity is far less frenzied than after last year's mini-budget. Official figures showed UK inflation in April slowed by less than expected to 8.7%, with core inflation, which strips out volatile factors such as food and energy, at a 31-year-old high. That led to a strong reaction in the markets, with the last few days described as pretty tumultuous by Luke Hickmore, Investment Director of Fixed Income at Aberdeen. The reason for that is that the markets now think the Bank of England will have to raise rates above their current level of 4.5% to as high as 5.5%. This change in expectations has led to big movements in prices and interest rates in the bond markets, and this has a knock-on effect on mortgages. So-called swap rates, which lenders use to price home loans, have increased. The inflation number was a real surprise. It stayed high and sticky, and that's really worried investors, Mr. Hickmore told the BBC's Today programme. It will affect mortgage and borrowing rates over the next year or two. Robert, a teacher from Hertfordshire, told the BBC he and his wife are facing an increase of £500 on their mortgage payments on their family home. He has been forced to take on a second job to cope. He said his current monthly mortgage payment is £1,400, but his deal expires in August. When we looked a couple of months ago, the mortgage estimates were around £1,800-ish. They're now for a 2-year around £2,000. If we were to fix for 5 years, it's around £1,900. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said he backed an increase in interest rates if it curbed higher prices and soaring inflation, even if it risked pushing the UK into a recession. Speaking to Sky News, Mr. Hunt insisted the only path to sustainable growth was to bring down the high prices behind the cost of living crisis. When asked if he was comfortable with the bank acting to bring down inflation, even if it led to a recession, Mr. Hunt said yes, because in the end inflation is a source of instability. The Bank of England has no choice but to increase interest rates further, according to Mohammed El-Erin, Chief Economic Advisor at Alliance, but he also told the Today programme that more action from the government was needed. The Bank of England will increase interest rates, but unless the government steps up to its efforts to increase productivity and improve supply chains and labour market functioning, we will end up in a situation where the Bank of England actually pushes us into recession. Rising prices in the UK have been driven in part by higher food prices, but speaking to the BBC, the boss of Sainsbury's, Simon Roberts, said supermarkets had not been using high rates of inflation as a cover for making higher profits. Supermarkets say higher sales are as part of a rebound in overall retail sales in April. Official figures from the ONS, or the Office for National Statistics, showed that sales volumes rose 0.5% last month, after activity in March was hit by wet weather. Various lenders have raised mortgage rates during the week, including a number on Friday. The UK's biggest building society, Nationwide, said it was putting up its mortgage rates to ensure they remain sustainable. Lloyds and Halifax have also increased rates in recent days. According to financial data firm Moneyfacts, a number of lenders have increased rates or withdrawn products from the market in response to this week's inflation figures. While changes are taking place, the situation does not echo the more chaotic scenes seen after the mini-budget of the Liz Truss government last year. Moneyfacts said that the average 2-year fixed-rate mortgage on the market is now 5.35%, and the average 5-year fix is 5.02%. Mark Harris, chief executive of mortgage broker SPF Private Clients, said while the markets have reacted negatively to the inflation figures, the latest jump in rates was likely to be a knee-jerk reaction that settled down. We remain confident mortgage rates will shortly peak, and the reductions, when they arrive, will be as quick as the recent rises. Earlier this week, the boss of Barclays warned UK homeowners and renters were facing a huge income shock as rising interest rates hit mortgages and monthly costs. CS Venteschristian said payments by mortgage holders and tenants would take a chunk of between 28 and 30% out of people's income, compared with an average of 20% in previous years. What happens if you miss a mortgage payment? A shortfall equivalent to 2 or more months' repayments means you are officially in arrears. Your lender must then treat you fairly by considering any requests about changing how you pay, perhaps with lower repayments for a short period. An arrangement you come to will be reflected on your credit file, affecting your ability to borrow money in the future. Twitter has pulled out the European Union's voluntary code to fight disinformation, the EU has said. Thierry Breton, who is the EU's Internal Market Commissioner, announced the news on Twitter, but warned the firm new laws would force compliance. Obligations remain. You can run, but you can't hide, he said. Twitter will be legally required to fight disinformation in the EU from the 25th of August, he said, adding, our teams will be ready for enforcement. Twitter has not confirmed its stance on the code or responded to a request for comment. Dozens of tech firms, both big and small, are signed up to the EU's disinformation code, including Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, as well as TikTok, Google, Microsoft and Twitch. The code was launched in June last year and aims to prevent profiteering from disinformation and fake news, as well as increasing transparency and curbing the spread of bots and fake accounts. Firms that sign the code can decide which pledges to make, such as cooperating with fact-checkers or tracking political advertising. Under Elon Musk's ownership, moderation at Twitter has reportedly been greatly reduced, which critics say has allowed an increase in the spread of disinformation. The social media giant used to have a dedicated team that worked to combat coordinated disinformation campaigns, but experts and former Twitter employees say the majority of these specialists resigned or were laid off. Last month, the BBC found hundreds of Russian and Chinese state propaganda accounts were thriving on Twitter, but Twitter boss Mr. Musk claims there is now less misinformation rather than more since he took over last October. Alongside the voluntary code, the EU has also brought in a Digital Services Act, a law which obliges firms to do more to tackle illegal online content. From the 25th of August, platforms with more than 45 million monthly active users in the EU, which includes Twitter, will have to comply legally with the rules under the DSA. The law will mean Twitter will have to have a mechanism for users to flag illegal content, act upon notifications expeditiously, and put in measures to address the spread of disinformation. On Friday, AFP news agency quoted a European Commission official as saying, if Elon Musk doesn't take the code seriously, then it's better that he quits. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon has provided a formal statement in 2 lawsuits over ties between the largest US bank and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The nearly 15-year relationship extended from 1998 to 2013, 5 years after the financier pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution. Prosecutors allege the bank ignored warning signs about their lucrative client and continued profiteering from him. Both Mr. Dimon and his employer have denied any wrongdoing and liability. JP Morgan said on Friday evening that Mr. Dimon stated he had never met or communicated with Epstein and did not recall discussing Epstein's accounts with others at the bank. Mr. Dimon's statement was taken in a private legal meeting known as a deposition at the bank's New York headquarters earlier in the day. Epstein, who died by suicide in 2019, kept hundreds of millions of dollars in more than 50 accounts at the bank until he was dropped as a client. Dual complaints filed late last year in federal court claims concerns were raised internally about his legal troubles and the underlying conduct, but JP Morgan kept him on as a customer. The suits were brought by 2 groups, one representing Epstein's victims and another on behalf of the government of the US Virgin Islands, where he owned a private island. Attorneys in the Virgin Islands suit said the bank knowingly facilitated, sustained and concealed the frequent cash withdrawals he made to pay the young woman he trafficked and made money off the deals and clients Epstein brought in. Court documents made public last week state that some 4 dozen employees flagged suspicions about Epstein's transactions. In a March deposition, first reported on Friday by the Washington Post, Mary Eddowes, who leads the bank's asset and wealth management division, testified that she was alerted on several occasions to Epstein's conduct, but did not think it was her responsibility to remove him as a client. Other documents seen by the New York Times reportedly show Epstein had a high degree of familiarity with and easy access to JP Morgan executives. JP Morgan, which earlier lost a bid to dismiss the pair of suits, has said that any civil liability in the case rests with former executive Jess Staley, an Epstein ally and Mr. Erdo's supervisor. Mr. Staley lost his bid this week to dismiss the complaint against him, but has said his former employer is trying to deflect blame and use him as a public relations shield for their own failures. The bank also separately accused Virgin Islands officials this week of looking away from Epstein's crimes because they were accepting bribes and favours from the late sex offender, including tuition payments for the children of local officials. Court proceedings in the case have been moving rapidly. In addition to questioning Mr. Dimon, Virgin Islands attorneys have issued dozens of subpoenas, including such high-profile names as Twitter CEO Elon Musk and Google co-founder Larry Page and Sergey Brin. The deposition comes just after a week after Deutsche Bank, who took Epstein on as a client after JP Morgan cut ties with him, settled for $75 million or £61 million with Epstein accusers. To date, the Epstein estate has paid over more than $150 million in settlements to more than 100 victims. There has been a second day of disruption for travellers at Heathrow after British Airways cancelled dozens more short-haul flights following Thursday's IT problems. BA said cancellations were still happening due to the knock-on effect of a technical issue resulting in staff being in the wrong location. A total of 175 flights have been axed, affecting more than 20,000 passengers. It comes on the busiest day for UK air travel since 2019. According to data firm Cirium, 83 BA flights, or around 8% of its planned Friday services, were cancelled. This followed the cancellation of 92 flights on Thursday, out of 860 that were scheduled. Most of the cancellations are for European and domestic flights, but there has also been delays to other services, while some passengers have been unable to check in online. Meanwhile, traffic has started building up in Dover as delays are expected on roads and ports over the bank holiday and school half-term break. On Thursday, BA apologised for the cancellations, saying it was related to technical problems, causing difficulties with online check-in. In a statement on Friday, the company said, "While the vast majority of our flights continue to operate today, we have cancelled some of our short-haul flights from Heathrow due to the knock-on effect of the technical issue that we experienced yesterday. Those affected have been offered the option to rebook an alternative flight or request a refund," BA added. The BBC understands that the technical issue has been resolved and should not affect flights from Saturday. Data firm Cirium said Friday was expected to see the most departures from UK airports since before the COVID pandemic, with more than 3,000 flights planned. This is partly down to families heading on holiday for the half-term break. Gavin Leno, aged 43, from Guernsey, was stuck at Heathrow on Thursday afternoon. "We were told to go to the flight cancellations desk to get assistance, but there were thousands of people there and a few staff. Most of the desks were empty. Eventually," he said, "BA staff told them they could not rebook as their systems were still down and instructed passengers to leave, pay for their own hotels and claim back up to £200. Mr. Lanu then booked a ticket on another airline from Gatwick. He said BA told him they would send his luggage to Gatwick, but this morning he discovered his bag was still at Heathrow. They've had enough IT failures now and they should be more practiced at dealing with them, but they are not." The issues started as security guards at Heathrow Airport, belonging to the Unite Union, began a 3-day strike over pay. The airport has said operations will not be affected. BA has been hit by other IT problems in recent years, including a major breakdown in 2017 that stranded 75,000 passengers over a holiday weekend. The incident sparked a customer backlash, with pledges from the carrier that it would do better in future. Passengers also faced delays due to an IT issue in February, days after flights have been cancelled due to Storm Eunice. Meanwhile, traffic has started building up at Dover as people embark on cross-channel ferry trips. Ferry operator DFDS said shortly before 8:30 a.m. British Standard Time that there was a wait of around an hour at border control for travellers in cars, while coach traffic was free-flowing. The Port of Dover tweeted that traffic is currently processing well with no wait time for coaches, less than an hour wait for cars. Dover has been dogged by long tailbacks of vehicles during busy holiday periods. In the lead-up to Easter, some coach passengers faced 15 hours delays to board ferries to France from the Kent port. Dover's boss said this week it has done everything we can to prevent travel delays over the upcoming bank holiday and school half-term breaks. On the roads motoring organisation, the RAC, said it expects this to be the busiest late May bank holiday since before the pandemic, with around 19 million separate leisure trips by car between Friday and the end of Monday. Elsewhere, Eurotunnel reported its cross-channel vehicle services were busy, but trains were departing on time. On the railway, a fault with the signalling system between East Croydon and Gatwick Airport is expected to cause disruption until around 3 p.m. Rail passengers are also being warned that services will be severely reduced because of strikes during the coming week. Members of the drivers' union ASLEF will walk out on the 31st of May and the 3rd of June, while the RMT union has called a strike on the 2nd of June. Since gas and electricity prices soared in the UK last year, fixed energy deals have all but disappeared as an option for households. But will bills due to drop from July? But with bills due to drop from July, could they be about to make a comeback? Under the new price cap, which is the maximum price suppliers can charge customers per unit of gas and electricity, a typical household will pay £2,074 a year for gas and electricity from July. That is £426 a year less than what they pay now, although still far higher than what we saw before the energy crisis. So far, most big suppliers have said they will bring their tariffs in line with the new cap, but none have set out cheaper fixed deals for customers. Such deals have effectively been off the table since the government stepped in to subsidise bills with its energy price guarantee in October, holding them at £2,500 a year for the average household. Suppliers have claimed they are not able to offer more competitive pricing plans, and so consumers have not been able to shop around. However, Natalie Mathy, an energy expert at the switching site uswitch.com, believes the fall in price cap will be a watershed moment for suppliers, who can now look to start offering fixed deals again, given the market conditions. The majority of homes are on standard variable tariffs and now subject to the volatility of price cap changes every 3 months, she says. But customers should have the choice of whether to lock in the benefits of lower wholesale prices for 12 months, just as they do in the mortgage market. We see no reason why energy suppliers cannot offer competitive fixed deals around the £2,000 level. Emily Seymour of Consumer Group Which thinks we should start seeing such deals sometime this year. We hope to see consumers back able to make some choices. It will be worth doing a bit of research to see if there's a deal out there that could be cost effective, while also offering a good customer service and low exit fees. However, she says it will depend on where energy prices go next, with fixed deals less likely if the cap has to go up again. Others, meanwhile, warned that fixed deals may not be the best for everyone, given the uncertainty over future prices. For example, energy supplier OVO launched a fixed deal for existing customers in March that was cheaper than the government's limit on household bills. It offered a fixed 12-month tariff of £2,275 for existing customers, but anyone who signed up is now locked into that rate, meaning they will miss out when the new cap comes into effect. Martin Lewis from personal finance website Money Saving Expert has also questioned just how much choice consumers will get when fixed deals finally return. I'm expecting to see existing customer offers where you will get a bespoke offer from your firm rather than deals offered across the market, he told BBC Radio 4. This could stifle competition, he warned, as the rules say companies do not have to publish the details of their existing customer offers. It makes it very difficult for people like me to assess. In any event, the energy analysts Cornwall Insight have suggested consumers should not expect to see huge savings from deals that do emerge. That is because further substantial falls in energy prices will be unlikely, particularly if there is a cold winter in Europe, with the UK competing to buy gas and electricity with other countries. Our forecast suggests that until the end of this decade, higher and more volatile prices are going to be seen, and that includes the impact they're going to have on domestic bills, unfortunately, Cornwall analyst Kate Mulvaney told the BBC. Energy suppliers should be in touch in the coming weeks to let customers know what their bills will look like under the new cap. However, Ms Seymour says it is always worth having a conversation with your supplier about any bespoke deals they can offer you. If you find yourself struggling to pay bills, consumer experts suggest speaking to your energy supplier about a payment plan that is manageable. By paying what you can, even if it's less than the amount due, your arrears will grow more slowly and your supplier is less likely to be worried about your debt. Your supplier could also check if you qualify for any government schemes. It's also important to check the amount you pay each month if you use a direct debit. Your monthly payment is based on your estimated usage throughout the year, not what you actually use, so keep a close eye and update your supplier with your meter readings. Here are some energy-saving ideas from environmental scientist Angelo Terry, who set up One Home, a social enterprise that shares green money-saving tips. Getting a water-efficient shower head free of charge from your water company and using showers rather than baths. Consider loft insulation, which he says costs around £460 for a typical semi-detached home and could save £355 a year on gas bills. Hanging out washing instead of using a tumble dryer and walk instead of drive when possible. Using windy days to feel where droughts are in the house. Wetting the back of your hand helps to locate them, then use insulation or drought-proofing tape. And when available, press the smaller button to use less water to flush the toilet. Britain's ice cream sellers have got 99 problems, and Cadbury Flakes being too crumbly is top of the tier list. Vendors say they've seen quality plummet since production of the chocolate stick switched to Egypt. Parent company Mondelez International said the issues have been addressed, but warned older stock might still be in circulation. That doesn't help those paying top money for a box of shards, said John Taylor, owner of C&M Creamery Ices. You can't give someone a 99 with a broken flake. It's embarrassing for an ice cream man. Lawrence Gloser, owner of Lorenzo's Ices in East Yorkshire, described it as a big issue and has resorted to more creative measures. Often at least a quarter of the box are unusable, he said. I now serve trays of ice cream and sprinkle bits of flake on top. I shouldn't have to do that. I'm fed up of the wastage. Mr. Glauser said while his first choice remained Cadbury Flake 99, when they are unusable he turns to a German alternative marketed as milk chocolate flake sticks. Customers don't seem to mind. The German ones are a lot denser and don't seem to fall apart as easily. Husband and wife team Martin North and Abby Beach have reported similar issues and some weeks don't bother to stock flakes at their business, Abio's. When they do, he has to explain to disgruntled customers why their topping crumbles. You physically can't get the flakes into the ice cream. As soon as you pick them up as they fall apart, it's not good when you're paying £16 a box. Mr. Taylor, who's been trading for 30 years in Harrogate, believes the quality of the product has deteriorated and so many people have spoken to him about it. They're crumbly by nature, but they should be able to stand up to a bit of moving around. They're charging top money for but they arrive as though they have been bounced off a cliff. If you're buying 5 boxes of flake for an event and you discover a lot of them are broken, your day is ruined. Wholesale boxes typically contain 144 flake 99s. Katie Alston, who operates a van in Bognor Regis and is also president of the Ice Cream Alliance, said she has had to throw half away in some cases. We thrown away 70 in a single box because they all been broken. For the first time I won't be using Cadbury Flake this year. It feels a different product. She said ice cream vendors have a reputation to remain. If you order a 99, you want a good solid flake in it. A spokesperson for Mondelez International said it cared about its customers and took issues with quality very seriously. Cadbury Flake 99 is a naturally delicate and crumbly product, and we have processes in place within our supply chain to avoid any breakage as much as possible. We are aware that recently some customers have received products which does not meet our usual high standards. This has been addressed following recent improvements to our production processes, although some prior stock may remain in circulation. We are in the process of liaising with our customer wholesalers to support those potentially impacted. We sincerely apologise for any inconvenience caused. The company said it has been making Flake 99 in Egypt since 2020 and insisted the recipe has not changed. Shares in computer chip designer Nvidia soared this week, taking the company's valuation close to the $1 trillion mark. The surge was sparked by its latest quarterly results, which were released on late on Wednesday. The company said it was raising production of chips to meet surging demand. Nvidia has come to dominate the market for chips using an artificial intelligence system. Interest in that sector reached frenzied levels after ChatGPT went public last November, which sent a jolt well beyond the technology industry. From helping with speeches to computer coding and cooking, ChatGPT has proved to be a widely popular application of AI. But all that would not be possible without powerful computer hardware, in particular computer chips from California-based Nvidia. Originally known for making the type of computer chips that process graphics, particularly for computer games, Nvidia hardware underpins most AI applications today. It is the leading technology player enabling this new thing called artificial intelligence, says Alan Priestley, a semiconductor industry analyst at Gartner. What Nvidia is to AI is almost like what Intel was to PCs, adds Dan Hutchison, an analyst at Tech Insights. ChatGPT was trained using 10,000 of Nvidia's graphics processing units, GPUs, clustered together in a supercomputer belonging to Microsoft. It is one of many supercomputers, some known publicly, some not, that have been built with Nvidia GPUs for a variety of scientific as well as AI use cases, says Ian Buck, General Manager and Vice President of Accelerated Computing at Nvidia. Nvidia has about 95% of the GPU market for machine learning, noted a recent report from CV Insights. Its AI chips, which it also sells in systems designed for data centers, cost roughly $10,000 or £8,000 each, though its latest and most powerful version sells for far more. So how did Nvidia become such a central player in the AI revolution? In short, a bold bet on its own technology plus some good timing. Jensen Huang, now the chief executive of Nvidia, was one of its founders back in 1993. Then Nvidia was focused on making graphics better for gaming and other applications. In 1999 it developed GPUs to enhance image display for computers. GPUs excel at processing many small tasks simultaneously, for example handling millions of pixels on a screen, a procedure known as parallel processing. In 2006 researchers at Stanford University discovered GPUs had another use. They could accelerate maths operations in a way that regular processing chips could not. It was at that moment that Mr. Huang took a decision crucial to the development of AI as we know it. He invested Nvidia's resources in creating a tool to make GPUs programmable, thereby opening up their parallel processing capabilities for uses beyond graphics. That tool was added to Nvidia's computer chips. For computer games players, it was a capability they didn't need, and probably weren't even aware of, but for researchers, it was a new way of doing high-performance computing on consumer hardware. It was that capability that helped spark early breakthroughs in modern AI. In 2012, AlexNet was unveiled as an AI that could classify images. AlexNet was trained using just 2 of Nvidia's programmable GPUs. The training process took only a few days rather than the months it could have taken on a much larger number of regular processing chips. The discovery that GPUs could massively accelerate neural network processing began to spread among computer scientists who started buying them to run this new type of workload. AI found us, says Mr. Buck. Nvidia pressed its advantage by investing in developing new kinds of GPUs, more suited to AI as well as more software to make it easy to use the technology. A decade and billions of dollars later, ChatGPT emerged an AI that can give eerily human responses to questions. AI startup Metaphysics creates photorealistic videos of celebrities and others using AI techniques. Its Tom Cruise deepfakes created a stir in 2021. To both train and then run its models, it uses hundreds of NVIDIA GPUs, some purchased from NVIDIA and others accessed through a cloud computing service. There are no alternatives to NVIDIA for doing what we do, says Tom Graham. Its co-founder and chief executive, it is so far ahead of the curve. Yet while NVIDIA's dominance looks assured for now, the longer term is hard to predict. NVIDIA is the one with the target on its back that everybody is trying to take down, notes Kevin Crewell, another industry analyst at Twycross Research. Other big semiconductor companies provide some competition. AMD and Intel are both better known for making central processing units, CPUs, but they also make dedicated GPUs for AI applications, Intel only recently joining the fray. Google has its Tensor processing units TPUs used not only for search results but also for certain machine learning tasks, while Amazon has a custom-built chip for training AI models. Microsoft is also reportedly developing an AI chip, and Meta has its own AI chip project. In addition, for the first time in decades, there are also computer chip startups emerging, including Cerebras, Samba Nova Systems and Habana, bought by Intel. They are intent on making better alternatives to GPUs for AI by starting from a clean slate. UK-based Graph Core makes general-purpose AI chips it calls Intelligence Processing Units IPUs, which it says have more computational power and are cheaper than GPUs. Founded in 2016, GraphCore has received almost $700 million or £560 million in funding. Its customers include 4 US Department of Energy national labs, and it has been pressing the UK government to use its chips in a new supercomputer project. GraphCore has built a processor to do AI as it exists today and as it will evolve over time, says Nigel Toon, the company's co-founder and chief executive. He acknowledges going up against a giant like NVIDIA is challenging. While GraphCore 2 has software to make its technology accessible, it's hard to orchestrate a switch when the world has built its AI products to run on NVIDIA GPUs. Mr. Toon hopes that over time, as AI moves away from cutting-edge experimentation to commercial deployment, cost-efficient computation will start to become more important. Back at NVIDIA, Ian Buck is not overly concerned about the competition. Everyone has the need for AI now, he says. It is up for others to work out where they are going to make a contribution. Health Secretary Steve Barclay has accused junior doctors of being unreasonable by refusing to budge on their demand for a 35% pay rise. Mr. Barclay told BBC One's Sunday with Laura Kunsberg programme there needed to be movement on all sides. But Dr. Vivek Trivedi from the Doctors' Union, appearing on the same show, said deals that amounted to a real terms pay cut were driving doctors away. Junior doctors are to walk out for 72 hours in June after pay talks stalled. It will be the third time junior doctors in England have staged strikes this year, after industrial action in March and April. Ministers have offered a 5% pay rise, but Dr. Trivedi, who co-chairs the British Medical Association BMA Junior Doctors Committee, said this would amount to a massive real terms pay cut. Due to rising prices, it was clear that after the government offered us their 5% despite us going back and being creative, they were the ones who wouldn't budge. However, Mr. Barclay said they've refused to move from the 35%, and I don't think that is a fair and reasonable demand for them to make. He added, we wanted to engage with them, but we have been doing so. It's the junior doctors who walked away from those negotiations by calling strikes. The Health Secretary insisted the government had already improved its pay offer from what was originally recommended by the Independent Pay Review Body. Asked what it would take to resolve the dispute, Dr. Trivedi said, we're trying all we can and are eager and ready to get back to the renegotiation table. It is the government who are refusing to meet us there. We have budged and are very happy to explore ways to fully restore our doctors' pay, and we've come up with a variety of proposals to do that. The BMA says junior doctors have seen pay cuts by 26% since 2008. Once inflation, the rate prices are rising, is taken into account. The union wants a 35% pay rise to reverse this. Dr. Trivedi said a pay offer which did not reverse this trajectory would not be fair or reasonable. Russia has warned Western supplies of weapons to Ukraine risk escalating the war to levels not seen so far. Andrei Kelin, Russia's ambassador to the UK, told the BBC his country had enormous resources and it was yet to act very seriously. His remarks come despite more than a year of fighting and widespread evidence of Russian war crimes. In the interview with Laura Kunsberg, he suggested he was offended when challenged about Russia's conduct. Speaking exclusively to the BBC, Mr. Kelin warned of a new dimension in the war, insisting Russia hasn't just started yet to act very seriously. The ambassador said Russia is 16 times bigger than Ukraine. We have enormous resources. The length of the conflict, he said, depends on the efforts in escalation of war that is being undertaken by NATO countries, especially by the UK. He added, sooner or later, of course, this escalation may get a new dimension, which we do not need and do not want. We can make peace tomorrow. The ambassador's comments came as one of Ukraine's most senior security officials, Alexei Danilov, told the BBC the country is ready to launch its long-expected counter-offensive against Russian forces. For Mr. Kelin's claim that Russia has enormous resources available to fight clashes, with multiple reports on the ground of its forces being poorly equipped and without proper training. Those warnings have even come from the head of Russia's Wagner mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who has been heavily involved in the conflict. He has been one of Vladimir Putin's staunchest supporters, but has been increasingly vocal and critical of the regime, suggesting in the last few days we could lose Russia if the war carried on without extra resources being provided. Earlier this month, he publicly scolded Putin's ministers in a post on social media, surrounded by dead bodies of his fighters. Where is the ammunition? He said. They came here as volunteers and died for you to fatten yourselves in your mahogany offices. The denial of the situation on the ground by Mr. Kelin was accompanied by his repetition of baseless claims about Russia's invasion, which he still insisted on calling a special military operation. Mr. Kelin was speaking in his residence underneath a chandelier where the chairs are gilt and coffee served by staff with white gloves. He tried to blame Ukraine for provoking the conflict. It's a familiar and untrue claim that has been used by Russian leaders for more than a year to justify its illegal invasion of Ukraine in the first place. Like his ambassador, President Putin continues to claim a neo-Nazi regime was set up in Ukraine in 2014, and that was even seeking to acquire nuclear weapons, which meant Russia had no choice but to invade. And the ambassador denies reality when it comes to the behaviour of Russian troops on the ground during the conflict too. Confronted with evidence from an official United Nations report of widespread crimes, torture, rape and the forced deportation of children, he replied by claiming Ukrainian forces had committed crimes against civilians too. There is evidence of a small number of human rights violations by Ukrainian forces, but the scale of Russian abuses is widespread, well documented and beyond doubt. When pressed that Russia was simply lying about what has happened and the clear patterns of appalling abuse, the ambassador claimed in our interview to be offended, and he had no other response to the latest missile attack in Dnipro, other than to say the problem is that the shooting is going on for 9 years, and every day shooting is going on in Luhansk, Donetsk, and all of that, claiming that the Western media was ignoring acts being carried out by Ukrainian forces. The ambassador's comments that the war is not yet serious contradicts the experience of so many Ukrainians whose lives have been turned upside down by the war, and many Russians who are suffering. But as Ukraine plans its counter-offensive and Russia shows no sign of retreat, the war may indeed get more serious still. You can watch the interview with Ambassador Kelin on the show that's featured at 9 AM, where they will talk about what is going on in the conflict and also about how President Putin deals with criticism, how he can justify the war crimes, and when the conflict has predicted to be ended. A government minister has said planned changes to a bill on investigations relating to the Northern Ireland Troubles would ensure the new system was more robustly compliant with international law. Lord Kane told the BBC he hoped the amendments would make the legislation more acceptable to its victims. The bill offers a conditional amnesty to those accused of Troubles-related crimes. The plans have been widely criticised. Most Northern Ireland victims groups strongly oppose plans to grant a conditional amnesty to former members of paramilitary groups and state forces if they cooperate with an information gathering process. Northern Ireland political parties, the Irish government and human rights organisations, including Amnesty and the Council of Europe, have also criticised the legislation as it stands. About 3,500 people died in 3 decades of violence known as the Troubles. The legislation being brought forward by the Westminster government will bring an end to inquests and civil court cases linked to the conflict. Instead, there will be a new agency, the Independent Commission for Reconciliation and Information Recovery, ICRIR, which will carry out reviews of crimes from the Troubles, as requested by bereaved families, the Northern Ireland Secretary and senior law officers. In a BBC interview, Northern Ireland Office Minister Lord Kane said he was continuing to work on amendments to the bill, which he will put forward during its next stage in the House of Lords in June. I want to make sure the bill is very clear that reviews can include criminal investigations to a standard that meets our international obligations. I'm also looking at measures to bolster and boost the independence of the Commission after a number of criticism that it gives the Northern Ireland Secretary too many powers. The Conservative peer said he was also planning to strengthen the penalties for people who do not cooperate with the ICRIR and to give the Commission powers to revoke a suspect's immunity from prosecutions if they are found to have misled investigators. Lord Kane acknowledged that the legislation involved difficulty and finely balanced political judgments, and said his friendship with the Tory MP Ian Gow, who was murdered by a IRA in 1990, meant he found the proposals personally challenging. But he asked for his amendments to be given a fair wind when they were unveiled. Many victims have been campaigning against the bill with focus on the conditional amnesty. Jennifer Jordan lost 6 members of her family during the Troubles, including her father Clifford Lundy. All of the men were in the security forces. She said the bill had nothing for innocent victims whatsoever. It puts the perpetrator on a parallel with the innocent victim, which is wrong. It's another version of a get-out-of-jail card. If you commit murder and then you go and tell a story and you get a reward for it, you get to go free. It doesn't make sense in a civilised society. Raymond McCord, whose son Raymond was murdered by loyalist paramilitary group the UVF, said the bill should be scrapped rather than amended. There can be no amnesty for murderers, he said. There should be prosecutions, inquests and civil cases. The government is taking away everything we should expect in a normal country. Ministers are hoping to pass the legislation before the summer recess. Lord Kane argued the legislation was designed to give people the best opportunity to get the facts about their relatives' deaths. At this distance from many of the events of the conflict, the likelihood of prosecutions is very slim, he said. I think getting as much information as possible to those who want it in a timely manner is probably the best thing we can hope to achieve. He stressed that the ICRIR would have police powers and would be able to conduct criminal standard investigations. It will be for the Commission to decide how to proceed in consultation with families. He responded to criticism that the appointment of the former Northern Ireland Lord Chief Justice, Sir Declan Morgan, to the position of ICRIR Chief Commissioner had been premature given the legislation was not yet complete. It's not wholly usual for people to be appointed to bodies prior to the body itself being established, Lord Kane said. He added that the claim was for a seamless transition from the old system to the new process when the bill was passed. He said the legislation was designed to give as many people as possible the opportunity to get the facts about deaths, given that successful prosecutions are now unlikely. What is the legacy bill? Legislation that aims to draw a line under the Northern Ireland Troubles by dealing with so-called legacy issues. The Northern Ireland Troubles Legacy and Reconciliation Bill runs to almost 100 pages. It was also introduced in May 2022 in an attempt to deal with more than 1,000 unsolved killings. A central element involves immunity from prosecution from those who cooperate with investigations run by a new information recovery body. Victims groups, the Irish government and political parties at Stormont are opposed to the bill, arguing it will remove access to justice for victims and their families. Veterans Commissioner Danny Kinahan gave the bill a cautious welcome, and it is also supported by the Government Island Veterans Movement. The bill had its second reading in the Lords on the 23rd of November. The government told peers it would bring forward amendments including a more robust process around immunity from prosecution. Lord Kane said the ICRIR would be able to conduct criminal investigations and to expect more amendments to the bill. Boris Johnson has insisted that there is nothing in his diary entries that shows further rule-breaking during the COVID pandemic. He was referred to police last week following a review of his official diary as part of the COVID inquiry. The former PM was approached by Sky News before catching a flight in Washington and said any new claims of rule-breaking were absolute nonsense. He said the diary entries were completely innocent. He added that the diaries from his time in Downing Street merely record entries in my day. The short interview is Mr. Johnson's first public comment on the latest development, and he said this whole thing is a load of nonsense from beginning to end. Mr. Johnson, who is currently being investigated by the Privileges Committee over whether he lied to Parliament over his repeated Partygate denials, questioned by the Cabinet Office, had handed over entries from his diary to police without first querying them with him. I think it's ridiculous that elements in my diary should be cherry-picked and handed over to the police and to the Privileges Committee without even anybody having the basic common sense to ask me what these entries referred to. The Times, which first broke the story about Mr. Johnson's diaries, said the entries revealed visits by Mr. Johnson's friends to Chequers, the PM's country estate, and events in Downing Street during the pandemic. But Mr. Johnson told Sky there are tens of thousands of entries in the Prime Ministerial diary, none of them constitute a breach of the rules during COVID. Mr. Johnson, who resigned as Prime Minister last July and has already been fined by the Metropolitan Police for breaking lockdown rules, previously said he believes he is the victim of a politically motivated stitch-up following his police referral on Wednesday. Energy firms are making war profits from the surge in oil and gas prices following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Shadow Chancellor has said. Rachel Reeves has told the BBC that companies should be taxed properly. Last week, the government introduced a windfall tax on profits made from extracting oil and gas in the UK to help fund a scheme to lower bills. A Treasury spokesperson said the profits are being used to ease pressure on families in the UK. These funds are being used to hold down people's energy bills and fund one of the most generous cost of living packages in the world, worth £94 billion, which is around £3,300 per household this year and last, the spokesperson said. The Energy Profits Levy (EPL), introduced in May last year, is set at 35% and, together with other taxes, takes the rate on oil and gas companies to 75%. The levy applies to profits made from extracting UK oil and gas, but not from other activities such as refining oil and selling petrol and diesel on forecourts. However, David Whitehouse, the chief executive of OE UK, the offshore industry body which represents oil and gas companies in the North Sea, said this level of tax discourages investment and undermines our companies, our jobs and our communities. The Labour Party has pledged to extend the windfall tax further, but has not yet indicated by how much. In an interview with the BBC's economics editor, Faisal Islam for newscast, Ms. Reeves said there needs to be a proper windfall tax on the huge profits the energy giants are making, because while they make huge profits, people are paying huge bills. Those are the windfalls of war, they should be taxed properly to help people with the cost of living crisis, she added. They are war profits. The only reason that energy prices rose like that is because of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. And the energy companies have benefited with higher profits on the back of that, and everybody else has been saddled with higher bills. Those are not profits because of the great ingenuity of the companies. That money should go into helping families with their energy bills and helping businesses who have also seen their bills go up. Earlier this month, the energy giant Shell reported profits of £7.6 billion for the first 3 months of the year. BP posted first quarter profits of £4 billion. The vast majority of both companies' profits are earned overseas and are therefore not covered by the UK's windfall tax. A windfall tax is used to target firms which benefit from something they were not responsible for. Energy firm profits have soared recently, initially due to rising demand after COVID restrictions were lifted, and then because Russia's invasion of Ukraine raised energy prices. First Minister Humza Yousaf have accused the UK government of sabotaging a pilot recycling scheme by excluding glass. Glass bottles were a key part of Scottish proposals for the Deposit Return Scheme DRS, due to start in March, ahead of other UK schemes. The UK government agreed for the scheme to go ahead in Scotland, but said it wanted to ensure it aligned with plans in other nations. The move cast doubt over whether the Scottish scheme can go ahead. Mr Yousaf told the BBC, "They're not just trying to scupper the DRS, they're trying to undermine devolution. We've seen it multiple times. Not only is it bad in terms of devolution and self-government, it's really poor for the environment. If we don't include glass, that's 600 million bottles that won't be moved from our streets, our beaches and our parks." BBC Scotland's political editor Glenn Campbell said one source closely involved in the DRS had put the chance of it going ahead at 50-50. The Scottish Government is expected to take a couple of weeks to crunch the numbers before making a decision. The scheme is aimed at increasing the number of single-use drinks bottles and cans that are recycled. It means 20p will be added to the price of a single-use drinks container, which will be refunded to people who return it to a retailer or hospitality process that offer single-use products. The scheme was due to begin in August, but was delayed following concerns from the drinks industry. Some firms feared it would place extra costs and other burdens on them at a time when they are already struggling. Similar UK initiatives are expected in 2025, with proposals in Wales including glass bottles. Because Scottish ministers wanted to introduce their scheme sooner, they had to seek an exemption from the Internal Market Act. The legislation was brought in after Brexit in a bid to ensure smooth trade across the different nations of the UK. There had been concerns that the timing of a Scottish scheme could create a trade barrier. On Saturday morning, the UK government confirmed it had accepted the Scottish government's request on a temporary and limited basis. The exemption from internal market rules lasts from the launch of the Scottish scheme until other planned schemes are in place in the rest of the UK. Scotland's DRS will cover PET, plastic, aluminium and steel cans only. A UK government spokesperson said deposit return schemes need to be consistent across the UK, and this is the best way to provide a simple and effective system. A system with the same rules for the whole UK will increase recycling, collection rates and reduce litter, as well as minimise disruption to the drinks industry and ensure simplicity for consumers. Mr Yousaf previously claimed it would be a democratic outrage for the UK government to agree to the DRS excluding glass. However, Scottish Conservatives MSP Maurice Golden said the situation was a mess of the Scottish government's own making. He said rather than trying to pick a fight, the SNP and Greens must now accept this helped to create a deposit return scheme that actually works for the people of Scotland. Scottish Greens co-leader Lorna Slater, who has been driving the introduction of the DRS, said the Scottish Parliament had been treated with contempt. The decision to exclude glass meant she would have to look very seriously at the viability of the Scottish scheme, she said. Mr Yousaf added that millions of pounds had been spent on a scheme that proposed to include glass. He said he did not want to go ahead with a scheme that excluded glass, but would look at the various options. For it to work effectively, the Scottish Deposit Return Scheme needs an exemption from the rules of the UK Internal Market Act. The Scottish Government has asked for that, and on the face of it, their request has now been granted by the UK Government, so what's the problem? There are strings attached, a tangle of conditions including the exclusion of glass that make the Scottish Government wonder whether their proposal is still viable. UK ministers will argue they were acting on a practical basis to ensure any Scottish schemes aligns with future developments in other parts of the UK. There are certainly businesses that welcome their intervention and others that may have an axe to grind against government at some level, having shelled out to prepare for a scheme that would include glass. To Scottish ministers, this is a power play by the UK government, an outrageous interference in devolved decision-making, akin to the block on gender reform legislation and resistance to Indie Ref 2. The British Soft Drinks Association, BSDA, has said the only viable option now was for a UK-wide initiative to be launched across all 4 nations in 2025. Dougal Sharp, founder of brewer Innis and Gunn, said uncertainty over the scheme made things brutal and impossible to plan. He said businesses are already spending a lot of money on the scheme. In Scotland, it just feels like another twist and a very shambolic scheme implementation. We've already seen it delayed from August. All of these delays inevitably lead to weakened consumer confidence and particularly business confidence. Businesses cannot plan in this environment. Businesses are struggling to survive, and this is absolutely the last thing we need at the moment. Two machine guns, 2 pistols and nearly 2,000 rounds of ammunition have been lost by UK armed forces over the past 2 years. Meanwhile, 2 SA-80 Cadet PR rifles were stolen in 2021. The figures first reported by the Daily Mirror also showed 258 laptops had been lost or stolen from the Ministry of Defence, MOD. The MOD said it had robust procedures to deter and prevent losses and thefts. The figures, released after a Freedom of Information request, revealed 2 general-purpose machine guns, GPMGs, 1 Glock 43X pistol, 1 Glock 17 pistol, and 1 deactivated AK-47 rifle were lost by the department in 2021 and 2022. Some 76 computers and 124 USBs were also lost or stolen over the past 2-year period. The MOD said the lost AK-47 rifle and stolen SA-80 Cadet PR rifles were deactivated and could not be reconverted into lethal weapons. It said most ammunition was lost accidentally during exercises or operations. The department added that all laptops, tablet computers and USBs were encrypted to minimise the impact of any losses. Labour's Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey said the first duty of any government is to keep people safe, so ministers have serious questions to answer on how these weapons, electronics and ammunitions have gone missing from MOD bases, and who's got them now. At a time when external threats are rising, ministers must sort out security inside the MOD to ensure UK equipment doesn't fall into the wrong hands. An MOD spokeswoman said, "We take the security of defence assets very seriously and have robust procedures to deter and prevent losses and thefts. In some cases of reported theft, the property is later recovered. If any items are reported lost or missing due to suspected criminal activity, we will take the necessary steps to investigate and to prosecute." Civil servants have paused planned strike action after the government offered to engage in meaningful talks over pay. Members of the Prospect Union were planned to walk out on the 7th of June across government departments. The FDA union, which represents senior civil servants, has also suspended a ballot for industrial action, which was due to start on Tuesday. Unions are calling for pay to reflect the rising cost of living. Other workers, including rail staff, nurses, junior doctors and teachers, have also walked out this year, as wages struggle to keep up with rising prices. Last month, the government published new plans for an average 4.5% pay increase for civil servants, with an additional 0.5% for lower pay bands. Inflation, the rate at which prices rise, dipped slightly from about 10% to 8.7% in April, but remains high. Mike Clancy, General Secretary of Prospect Union, which has more than 32,000 civil service members, said, "We have agreed to pause our planned strike action in the civil service because the government have communicated their willingness to engage in meaningful talks. Throughout this dispute, we have made clear that our members should not be treated worse than any other workers in the public sector, and that they deserve a pay deal that recognises the cost of living crisis that began last year." However, he added that the union would maintain action short of strike, including only carrying out duties listed in employee contracts and an overtime ban, and review their positions in light of the talks that are promised. FDA General Secretary Dave Penman said the decision to ballot for national industrial action over pay was taken by the FDA for the first time in 40 years. It was intended to send a clear message to the government that enough was enough, as they had failed to demonstrate that they valued the civil service equally with the rest of the public sector. The invitation to talks is the first indication that this message has been heard, but it said if the talks did not deliver for members, The union stands ready to proceed with the banner for industrial action that we have prepared for. In April, more than 130,000 civil servants who are members of the PCS union went to strike over pay, pensions and job security. The union is calling for a 10% pay rise. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has met former President Donald Trump to discuss the situation in Ukraine. The meeting took place on Thursday during Mr. Johnson's visit to the United States. This week, Mr. Johnson has also met Republican politicians in Texas and Mr. Trump's former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to shore up support for Ukraine. Mr. Trump has previously described Mr. Johnson as a friend, but their stances on the Ukraine war differ. Mr. Johnson has been a vocal supporter, visiting Ukraine several times and calling for the West to provide more weapons to the country. Mr. Trump, on the other hand, has previously refused to commit to sending military aid to Ukraine if he returned to the White House and would not say who he thought should win the war. The US has committed $46.65 billion of arms and equipment to Ukraine over the past year, and making it the largest donor of military aid to the country, followed by the UK, which has committed $7.16 billion. The pair have met several times before, including on the sidelines of the 2019 G7 summit in France. When Mr. Johnson became Prime Minister, Mr. Trump described him as a good man, adding they call him Britain Trump. ITV has said it investigated rumours of a relationship between Philip Schofield and a younger employee in 2020, but both repeatedly denied it. Schofield quit ITV on Friday after admitting he had had an affair with a younger male colleague at the network and had lied to cover it up. The TV presenter said the relationship had been unwise but not illegal. Some former ITV daytime figures said the revelations raised questions about how much the network's managers knew. An ITV spokesperson said further to our statement last night, ITV can confirm that when rumours of a relationship between Philip Schofield and an employee of ITV first began to circulate in early 2020, ITV investigated. Both parties were questioned and both categorically and repeatedly denied the rumours, as did Philip's then agency YMU. In addition, ITV spoke to a number of people who worked on This Morning and were not provided with and did not find any evidence of a relationship beyond hearsay and rumours. Philip's statement yesterday reveals that he lied to people at ITV, from senior management to fellow presenters to YMU to the media and to others over this relationship. Former ITV daytime presenters, including Eamon Holmes and Dan Wootton, have suggested ITV bosses have questions to answer about how much oversight they had on one of their most high-profile broadcasters. Schofield released a statement to the Daily Mail on Friday saying, "I did have a consensual on-off relationship with a younger male colleague at This Morning. He was still married to his wife Stephanie Lowe at the time of the affair. They separated in 2020 after he came out as gay. Schofield said he was so very, very sorry for being unfaithful to his wife and for lying to his colleagues, agents, employers, friends, the media and the public, and to his family about the relationship." He continued, "Contrary to speculation, whilst I met the man when he was a teenager and he was asked to help him to get into television, it was only after he started to work on the show that it became more than just a friendship. That relationship was unwise but not illegal. It is now over." He also said he would reflect on my very bad judgment in both participating in the relationship and then lying around it. It follows significant online speculation over several months about Schofield's personal relationships. The 61-year-old's exit from ITV means he will no longer present the British Soap Awards next month. He will also not front a new primetime series, which the network said last week they were developing for him. An earlier statement from ITV said Philip made assurances to us which he now acknowledges were untrue, and we feel badly let down. Dermot O'Leary, who presents This Morning on Fridays opposite Alison Hammond, declined to discuss the matter on Saturday. "I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment, especially without any knowledge," he told reporters outside BBC Radio 2, where he presents a weekend show. The latest revelations come just a week after Schofield left his role at This Morning, following reports of a rift with co-star Holly Willoughby. Schofield had presented This Morning since 2002, with Willoughby joining him as a co-presenter in 2009. In his statement on Friday, Schofield said his departure from the show was unrelated to the affair with the colleague, who the BBC is not naming. His final appearance on This Morning was on Thursday 18th of May, and he announced his departure from the show that weekend. Cover presenters Hammond and O'Leary paid tribute to Schofield at the start of Monday's programme. Willoughby is currently on holiday, but is set to return to the show on Monday the 5th of June. Talent agency YMU has also cut ties with the presenter following his announcement about the affair. In a statement to the BBC, Schofield said, "It is with the most profound regret that after 35 years of being faultlessly managed by YMU, I have agreed to step down from their representation with immediate effect." In May, his brother Timothy Schofield was jailed for 12 years after being found guilty of sexually abusing a boy. French murder mystery film Anatomy of a Fall has taken the top prize at this year's Cannes Film Festival. Director Justine Triet won the Palme d'Or for her intense courtroom drama, which tells the story of a writer accused of her husband's murder. She becomes the third female director ever to win the prestigious prize, which was first awarded in 1955. Her thriller stars German actress Sandra Hüller, who also stars in the Cannes runner-up, The Zone of Interest. As she accepted the award, Triet slammed the French government over its response to recent pension protests. "These protests were repressed in a shocking way," she said in her speech, after being presented with the award by Hollywood star Jane Fonda. President Emmanuel Macron's reforms of the pension system, which include raising the retirement age from 62 to 64, have caused huge protests in France. Triet also criticised what she called the government's commercialisation of culture, leading France's culture minister Rima Abdul Malak to hit back, saying she was gobsmacked by the unfair comments. The Grand Prix, the second highest prize, went to British director Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest, an adaptation of the late Martin Amis' novel of the same name about a family living next to Auschwitz. Meanwhile, the Best Actor award went to Japan's Koji Yakusho for his role as a middle-aged Tokyo man who cleans toilets in Wim Wenders' Perfect Days, and Turkey's Merve Dizdar was named Best Actress for About Dry Grasses, and Vietnamese French director Tran Anh Hoang won Best Director for Pot au Feu, a love story starring Juliette Binoche and Benoit Magimel set in a 19th century French chateau. The festival was one of the biggest in years for celebrity names on the red carpet. Hollywood legends Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro, Quentin Tarantino, Isabella Rossellini, and Sean Penn all made appearances. Harrison Ford also attended to receive an honorary Palme d'Or ahead of the screening of his new film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. The US star, aged 80, said he was deeply moved and humbled to be honoured with the award. The Palme d'Or is the highest prize awarded at the festival and was introduced in 1955 by the festival's organising committee. Triet beat 21 other films in competition for the accolade, seeing off tough competition from new films by acclaimed directors including Wes Anderson and Ken Loach. Celine Dion has cancelled all her remaining live shows, telling fans she is not strong enough to tour after being diagnosed with a rare neurological disorder. The singer revealed last year she was suffering from stiff person syndrome, SPS, which was affecting her singing. Dion has now cancelled all the shows she has scheduled for 2023 and 2024. In a statement posted on Twitter, the 55-year-old told fans, "I'm so sorry to disappoint all of you once again. Even though it breaks my heart, it's best that we cancel everything until I'm really ready to be back on stage." She added, "I'm not giving up and I can't wait to see you again." In December 2022, the French-Canadian singer posted an emotional video on Instagram to say she had been diagnosed with SPS and would not be ready to start a European tour in February as planned. She said the disorder was causing muscle spasms and was not allowing me to use my vocal cords to sing the way I'm used to. The Courage World Tour began in 2019, and Dion completed 52 shows before the COVID-19 pandemic put the remainder on hold. She later cancelled the North American dates due to health problems and delayed the European leg of the tour. On Friday, those delayed European performances were cancelled altogether, including dates in London, Dublin, Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam, Stockholm and Zurich. A statement released by her tour said that shows were being cancelled with a sense of tremendous disappointment. I'm working really hard to build back my strength, but touring can be very difficult even when you're 100%, the statement quoted Dion as saying. The tour was to have been Dion's first global concert tour in a decade, and the first without her husband, manager Renee Angelil, who died from cancer in 2016. Dion is best known for hits including My Heart Will Go On, Because You Love Me, All By Myself, and It's All Coming Back to Me Now. SBS is a rare condition and not well understood. According to the National Institute for Neurological Disorders, it is characterized by fluctuating muscle rigidity in the trunk and limbs and a heightened sensitivity to stimuli such as noise, touch and emotional distress, which will set off muscle spasms. Abnormal postures, often hunched over and stiffened, are characteristic of the disorder. The Institute says the people with SBS can be too disabled to walk or move, or they are afraid to leave the house because of street noises such as the sound of a horn can trigger spasms and falls. Most individuals with SBS have frequent falls, and because they lack the normal defensive reflexes, injuries can be severe. While there is no cure for SBS, there are treatments including anti-anxiety medicines and muscle relaxants which can slow down its progression. Yords has been making music ever since he bought a £1 microphone from Argos at the age of 13. Back then he was just trying to impress his older brother. He's my best friend and I wanted to copy him and be like him, he says. But from those humble beginnings, the Croydon-born teenager grew into one of the UK's most engaging, musically curious rappers. Over a series of mixtapes and EPs, he's used music to navigate identity, love and loss. Now aged 28, he's releasing a debut album, Dirt in the Diamond, that involved taking myself apart and examining every atom of his existence. Jamaican ancestry, parental expectations, masculinity, success, and the stark contrast between street politics and religious devotion. 5 years in the making, it's a thoughtful, powerful and bold exploration of identity and self-acceptance that transcends the norms of UK rap. And when the historic US label Motown Records heard it, they wanted to be the ones to release it. Motown approached the musician with an offer at last year's Great Escape Festival, and he accepted in a heartbeat. When I started rapping when I was struggling and upcoming, I used to feel embarrassed telling my parents about it, he explains, but when it's Motown, everyone knows what Motown is. And then you take in that this is the first UK rap album that's coming out on Motown. The first one, it's already immortal. Yords was born Jordan Edwards Wilkes and raised in Croydon to Jamaican parents. He didn't know it then, but music was in his blood. His uncle is the Grammy Award-winning songwriter Gordon Chambers, who wrote Brownstone's 1990s hit If You Love Me, and his dad was a singer in 80s band The Jazz Defectors, who toured with Sade and appeared with David Bowie in Absolute Beginners. I found out by accident because we were in Asda, and these two guys just came up and went, "Oh my gosh, you're Barrington from the Jazz Defectors," he laughs. I was like 8 or 9 and they just started fanboying over my dad. I remember looking over at him and thinking, who are you? Like most kids, however, inspiration came from his peers, not his parents. Yords grew up in the first wave of grime, watching local acts like Krept and Conan hit the big time. He copied their style on his first recordings, using the alias Vicious Kid and showing MP3s around his neighbourhood via Bluetooth. After self-releasing the soulful eclectic mixtape Means to an Ends in 2016, he signed to Universal for 2020's Almost an Adult. That record was a coming-of-age tale that pivoted around the loss of his grandmother and saw Yords finesse his layered melodic flow over a signature blend of jazzy R&B and London street sounds. But after releasing the Black Lives Matter anthem Black and Ready in June 2020, he wasn't sure how to progress. Sessions for his debut album faltered as he grappled with the weight of expectation from his fans his label and his peers. Then in December 2021, I just turned off both my phones and went to the studio for a month. I was fed up with having so much on my shoulders and had to go away and find some peace. As his vision cleared, he realised that shaking off other people's expectations, both musical and societal, had been a reoccurring theme. Even growing up, people would hear that I'm from Thornton Heath, and the immediate reaction was sharp intake of breath. Oh, you're the diamond in the rough, which insinuates that everything around you is rough, and I don't believe that, I just don't believe that, he says. So I flipped it to the dirt in the diamond. Everyone is a diamond, but we all have these bits of dirt within us that, if we were improving ourselves, we would try and work on. It gave him the title of the album, but also a motif, the trap of preconceptions, and especially among black working class families. My list of achievements is longer than my list of regrets, he raps on Rice and Peas. But we still got to fight for respect, and I'm fight for to the death. It's a topic he interrogates further in a short film accompanying the album. A collaboration with British-Nigerian director Rene Osobu, it takes place at a funeral and the subsequent nine nights wake for a young black man in 1970s London. Shot in beautiful cinnamon and ochre tones, it's deliberately inspired by Steve McQueen's Small Axe films, and like them, juxtaposes scenes of grief and celebration with focus on black British expression. I love portraying it in the 70s because firstly, I got all my friends to dress up, so that was really cool, says George, and secondly, it's really poignant to show that the cycle of poverty and loss continues. It's a topic he's addressed before, not just in his music, but also through Pickney Uniforms, a charity he co-founded, which gives free school uniforms to children from low-income families. He says there are systematic problems that perpetuate poverty in the UK. I don't understand, for example, why petrol prices are higher than they've ever been, but petrol companies are making more profit than they ever have, he says. When things like that are in place, of course the people at the lower end of the economic scale are going to see the worst of it, and unfortunately they tend to be ethnic minorities. But I also believe that you can make the change that you want to see, so I'd rather try and provide an infrastructure, maybe be like a Saturday school where we could bring kids in and teach them about black history. There's an urgency to the early tracks on Dirt in the Diamond as George wrestles with those questions of identity and lineage and deprivation, but just like he did in real life, the album steps back and adjusts its perspective on a ruminative track called I Pray. Over a gentle acoustic guitar and a shuffling drum beat, he raps about heading to the mountains to realign, while Wretch 32 adds a verse about putting faith and family over money and his career. For Yords, it was a full circle moment. Wretch's dexterous flow influenced his own style, and recorded with the star marked the moment then the album finally came together. To be honest, we spent about 2 hours on a song and about 5 hours in conversation, he says. It was like Simba talking to Mufasa. With the baton passed, he found the courage to experiment more than ever. Across Dirt in the Diamond, George stretches his musical muscles, incorporating sensuous dancehall and reggaeton grooves into songs like Stay Close and Mobe, and amalgamating two schools of UK rap on the strident drill versus grime. I'm a real music nerd, he laughs. I watched documentaries upon documentaries. When I went to college, we did 2 modules. One was on Pink Floyd and the other was on Kurt Cobain and the rise of grunge. I've always enjoyed every style of music, and whenever I enjoy something, I really want to have my own interpretation of it. It's that sort of musical curiosity that puts Yords in the lineage of Motown. Legends like Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder, who formed new frontiers of soul and social commentary in the 1970s. Nonetheless, George can't quite wrap his head around the fact that they're all part of the same, storied, catalogued. It's kind of weird accepting that this is a real thing, having your album as part of that legacy. I can't even take it serious. Michael Jackson, Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross, and Yords, come on. A Los Angeles judge says she will dismiss a child sex abuse lawsuit brought by the stars of the 1968 film Romeo and Juliet. Olivia Hussey and Leonard Whiting alleged the film's directors coerced them into filming nude while underage. A Superior Court judge found that the scene wasn't sufficiently sexually suggestive to overrule First Amendment protections. Hussey was 15 at the time of the filming and Whiting 16. In a tentative ruling issued on Thursday, Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Alison McKenzie said the plaintiffs cherry-picked which statutes applied to their case. She also said the lawsuit did not meet the requirements for suspending the statute of limitations for child sexual abuse. Attorney Solomon Greason, who represented both Ms. Hussey and Mr. Whiting in the case, told BBC News he felt the ruling was on the wrong side of the issue. There is no First Amendment protection of nude children simulating sexual congress, Mr. Greason said. He said his clients are considering an appeal, and he intends to file a separate lawsuit in federal court. In a joint statement, Ms. Hussey and Mr. Whiting, now both in their 70s, said they would continue to fight. We waited going on 55 years for justice. I guess we'll have to wait longer, they said. In December, the actors filed a lawsuit against Paramount Pictures for sexual harassment and child sexual abuse. They claimed the film's director, Franco Zeffirelli, had encouraged them to film nude scenes despite previous assurances they would not have to. The suit alleged that Zeffirelli, who died in 2019, said that they must act in the nude or the picture would fail according to the original complaint. He then assured both actors that the cameras would not capture any nudity, the suit said. However, in the final film, Whiting's bare buttocks and Hussey's bare breasts were briefly shown during the scene. The two actors sought damages of more than $500 million, or £417 million, based on suffering that they said they had both experienced and the revenue brought in by the film since its release. The BBC contacted Paramount for comment, but have yet had any response. We firmly believe that the exploitation and sexualization of minors in the film industry must be confronted and legally addressed to protect vulnerable individuals from harm and ensure the enforcement of existing laws, Mr. Greason said in a statement. The 1968 adaptation of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet won numerous Academy Awards, including for Best Picture and Best Cinematography. But the infamous bedroom scene has also sparked controversy over the years. The film continues to be shown in classrooms around the world during lessons on William Shakespeare. Hugh Grant is set to take the Sun newspaper on in court over claims it used illegal methods to gather stories about him. The actor believes private investigators working for the Sun tapped his phone, bugged his house and car and burgled his home. The Sun's publisher, News Group Newspapers NGN, unsuccessfully argued his action should be blocked because he waited too long to launch it. NGN denies the claims against it. A judge was asked to rule on whether Mr. Grant's lawsuit should be allowed to proceed because it dates back further than 6 years, the cut-off point for legal action of this kind in civil courts. This time limitation has become a major legal battleground in cases against newspapers because allegations of wrongdoing often go back 30 years. Publishers attempt to argue that cases should not go to trial because alleged victims of unlawful news gathering delayed their legal action. But Mr. Grant argued he should be allowed to bring the case now because material he and his lawyers will rely on only came to light in recent years. Some of the evidence against the newspaper was contained in a 2021 witness statement made by private investigator Gavin Burrows. It was only when NGN disclosed invoices for their payments to Mr. Burrows around the same time that Mr. Grant had access to potential evidence which could help him win his case in court. In his judgment, Mr. Justice Fancourt acknowledged that the 62-year-old actor and privacy campaigner had long believed that private investigators had been paid to look into his affairs. The judge said there was a realistic chance Mr. Grant would establish at trial that, before seeing the 2021 evidence, he could not reasonably have believed with sufficient evidence and confidence that he may be targeted by private investigators instructed by the Sun. This judgment does not mean the issue of whether Mr. Grant's claim is too late has been decided, but it will now be considered at the trial next year. In a statement released through his lawyer, Mr. Grant said, "I am pleased that my case will be allowed to go to trial, which is what I have always wanted, because it is necessary that the truth comes out about the activities of the Sun. As my case makes clear, the allegations go far wider and deeper than voicemail interception. Mr. Grant's statement in the case claims that for years newspaper published News UK lied about its involvement in phone hacking and illegal information gathering. He said the company had a vast, long-lasting and deliberate policy, strategy, plan of false denials and other concealment in relation to the Sun to prevent me and others in a similar position from bringing claims against them. This included, he said, false denials to the Leveson inquiry into press standards, a press complaints body, and in public statements. While the actor was successful in securing his day in court on part of his claim, the court refused Mr. Grant permission to sue NGN for allegedly hacking his phone voicemails, as the judge ruled he could have brought a case much earlier. NGN said it was pleased that, following our application, the High Court has ruled that Mr. Grant is a statute barred from bringing a phone hacking claim against the Sun. NGN strongly denies the various historical allegations of unlawful information gathering contained in what remains of Mr. Grant's claim. A similar legal argument centred on the claims of the Duke of Sussex is due to be heard by the High Court in July. Actor Tom Hanks has told graduates from Harvard University in the US that truth is sacred and urged them to fight to defend it. The two-time Oscar winner was the main speaker at the prestigious institution's commencement ceremony for students completing degrees. He received an honorary arts degree himself. The truth to some is no longer empirical, he told an audience of more than 9,000 people. It's no longer based on data, nor common sense, nor even common decency. Telling the truth is no longer the benchmark for public service, he said. Truth is now considered malleable by opinion, by zero-sum endgames. Hanks also told the graduates they had a choice to be one of the three types of Americans: those who embrace liberty and freedom for all, those who won't, or those who are indifferent. But he said that the responsibility to uphold the truth belonged to everybody. The effort is optional, but the truth is sacred, unalterable, chiselled into the stone and the foundation of our republic. The 66-year-old's speech was not without its lighter moments, as he joked about his lack of academic credentials. I don't know much about Latin, I have no real passion for enzymes, and public global policy is something I scan in the newspaper just before I do the Wordle, he said, referring to the popular web-based game. Hanks asked graduates not to be embarrassed by the fact he was receiving a degree, without having done a lick of work, without having spent any time in class, without once walking into that library. But he made a damn good living playing someone who did, he added, referring to the fictional Harvard professor Robert Langdon, who he played in the films The Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, and Inferno. It's the way of the world, kids, he said as his audience laughed. Hanks, who was one of the 6 people to receive honorary degrees on Thursday, was also given a Harvard volleyball in reference to one of his best-known roles in the films Castaway. The filming of the major TV series Blade Runner 2099 in Belfast has been delayed. BBC News Northern Ireland understands a strike by Hollywood TV and film writers is one of the factors behind the postponement, with filming unlikely to resume before spring 2024. The series, based on the iconic Blade Runner films, is due to be shot at Belfast Harbour Studios. Northern Ireland Screen said it was extremely disappointed. Richard Williams, chief executive of the industry body, had announced details of the series in October 2022, when launching the organisation's 4-year strategy until 2026. On Friday, he said the project had been prepping on the ground in Belfast for many months. The WGA strike has been halting production all over the world, and we hope a fair deal is reached soon so crew can get back to work, he added. He said Northern Ireland Screen would do everything it could go to plug that gap in Northern Ireland production schedule as quickly as possible, mindful that many freelance crew and supply chain companies were relying on this project for work in the months ahead. Blade Runner 2099 was commissioned by the streaming giant Amazon, with Sir Ridley Scott, who directed the original 1982 Blade Runner film, as executive producer. A previous sequel to the original film, Blade Runner 2049, starring Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling, was released in 2017. More than 11,000 members of the Writers Guild of America, WGA, are taking action over pay and a greater share of the profits from streaming services. A number of high-profile TV shows in the USA have been off-air since early May as a result, but as the strike continues, other series are likely to be pushed back and delayed. It is not yet known how many crew and staff in Northern Ireland will be affected by the delay of Blade Runner 2099. Another major film, a live-action version of the animated hit How to Train Your Dragon, is currently in production in Northern Ireland. Changes to the timescale of major productions are not uncommon in the film and TV industry. A major expansion to Belfast Harbour Studios is currently being built, including a new virtual production facility called Screen Ulster. A lot has changed about the music scene since Radio 1's Big Weekend last hit Dundee in 2006. Just ask Slime and Chowman, two emerging stars on this year's lineup. The festival returns to Camberdown Country Park this weekend, 3 years after the event was cancelled in the city because of COVID, and the rappers are ready to represent the recent rise of South Asian musicians, DIY production and TikTok-driven viral hits. I want it to be a thing where it's cool to be South Asian, Slime tells BBC Asian Network. The Sheffield-based artist recently blew up with his song Lehenga, which he says was made to make South Asian women feel empowered about themselves and the way they dress. South Asian girls definitely deserve it. They need way more representation, he says. I'm glad I was able to do that with that song. But his success was coming out as a surprise. Seeing the numbers it's done, seeing how many people are interacting, it's surreal. And after it led to an invite to perform at Big Weekend's time, he couldn't believe it. Crazy. I cannot actually represent South Asians on a stage like this, where some big names are going to be. It's just mind-blowing. I'm still trying to process it. And Slime isn't alone. Chowman, a rapper from London, is also set to perform on the BBC introducing stage 2 days after dropping his debut album. I'm gassed, he says. Speaking to BBC Asian Network about his recent track Brown Boys, Chowman says there's just not a lot of South Asian rappers in the grime scene. I'm trying to rep it for sure. Chowman is also representing the growing number of artists able to make an impact without expensive studios and big budget productions. All the songs you're going to hear at Big Weekend are recorded in my bedroom wardrobe, he says, and despite being a long way from that bedroom this weekend, he's expecting a lot of support in Dundee. Who's playing Big Weekend? Big Weekend is happening between the 26th to the 28th of May at Camberdown Park in Dundee in Scotland. Dance acts like Jamie XX, Eliza Rose and LF System take to the stage on Friday. Saturday will be headlined by the 1975 with performances with artists like Jonas Brothers and Flo, and on Sunday Lewis Capaldi and Wetleg lead the bill, which acts like Arlo Parks, Niall Horan and Becky Hill also performing. They asked about 20 of their mates, expecting about 5 of them to say yes. It's a long trip, he admits. They all said yes, so my mates are going to be front row, screaming on. But Chowman is far from phased. I'm ready for it. I feel like the time is right. Thousands of Harry Styles fans have been queuing in Edinburgh since the early hours in a bid to be at the front of the crowd for his latest concert. The singer is in the city to perform his show Harry Styles Love on Tour at Murrayfield Stadium. The 28-year-old kicked off the 32-city tour last summer in Glasgow. Fans from all over Europe descended on the Murrayfield site wearing colourful clothes and feathers synonymous with Harry Styles. Ella Passon told BBC Scotland how her mother travelled from Scotland to take her out of her boarding school in London for the concert. The 14-year-old said, I'm a massive fan and it is one of the most exciting things that's happened to me. I've been counting down the days since I got the tickets 8 months and 3 days ago. I love everything about Harry, his music and him. He wore a sequined jumpsuit at Coachella in LA, so that's why I bought a sequined dress for the concert. I didn't sleep last night. Her mum, Leanne Patterson, aged 35 from West Lothian, said her grandparents got the tickets for her Christmas present. She is going to cry when she sees them on stage. Every child should experience a concert if they have a passion for an artist so they can feel the atmosphere. Multi-award-winning Styles British and European live shows were postponed in 2020 and 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Danny Powell, aged 20, from South Shields near Newcastle, said her dad drove her to Edinburgh. She said, "We left at 7 a.m. We left that early because we want to be at the front, hopefully. I saw him last year and he by far has the best concerts. They will go down in history because they are so different and they stand out. I'm here with my sister Taylor and she is going to pass out when he comes on stage, so I'm going to stand behind her." Taylor Powell, aged 16, said she would cry when she saw Harry. "I'm a mega fan. I'm so excited to be here." Jadzia Malam, aged 17, from Newcastle, said she skipped school to be at this concert. "I don't think anyone will be at school today. Our dad drove us here very early this morning. We want to be here at the front. I have a life-size cardboard cutout of Harry in my house and have been to his concerts in Glasgow and Manchester." Karis McKee-Shell, aged 17, said, "I also skipped school to be here. I'm beyond excited and it feels like a dream. It just doesn't feel real." Aaron Burgess travelled from Dundee, where he is in his final year at university as an anatomy student. The 22-year-old said, "We were on the bus at 8 a.m. We want to be at the front because it's a better experience. I love how flamboyant Harry is and how he expresses himself through the clothes he wears. Bright pinks and bows and feathers all form his identity and I gravitate towards it. I'm so excited to be here, but not for the wait." Amy Simons, aged 21, also a student at Dundee University, said she had worked out which doors to queue at to maximise her chances of reaching the front of the stage. "When I go to concerts, I talk to the staff as they always know all the doors to stand at and how it works. They want it to run calmly and for everyone to have a good time, so they are the key to finding the best place to queue." Alicia Pania Safat, aged 21, from Italy, said, "I'm an anxious person, so I wanted to make sure I was here in plenty of time to make sure I would be at the front. I've been a fan for half of my life and have good memories of Harry from my childhood. It's great to be part of something like this, to be part of a big community and to meet like-minded people and to share experiences." Elon Musk's brain chip firm says it has received approval from the US Food and Drinks Administration (FDA) to conduct its first tests on humans. The Neuralink implant company wants to help restore vision and mobility to people by linking brains to computers. It says it does not have immediate plans to start recruiting participants. Mr. Musk's previous ambitions to begin tests came to nothing. The FDA said it acknowledged Neuralink's announcement. An earlier bid by Neuralink to win FDA approval was rejected on safety grounds, according to a report in March by the Reuters news agency that cited multiple current and former employees. Neuralink hopes to use its microchips to treat conditions such as paralysis and blindness, and to help certain disabled people use computers and mobile technology. The chips, which have been tested in monkeys, are designed to interpret signals produced in the brain and relay information to devices via Bluetooth. Experts have cautioned that Neuralink's brain implants will require extensive testing to overcome technical and ethical challenges if they are to become widely available. Mr. Musk has also previously suggested that the proposed technology could help ease concerns about humans being displaced by AI. Announcing Thursday's news on Twitter, Neuralink talked of an important first step that will one day allow our technology to help many people. The approval was the result of incredible work by the Neuralink team in close collaboration with the FDA, it said. The firm promised more information soon on plans to sign up trial participants. Its website promises that safety, accessibility and reliability are all priorities during its engineering process. The company, which was co-founded by Mr. Musk in 2016, has repeatedly overestimated the speed at which it can execute its plans. Its initial aim was to start planting chips in human brains in 2020 in order to honour a pledge made the year before. It later vowed to get started in 2022. The business was dealt another setback in December last year after reportedly coming under investigation for alleged animal welfare violations in its work. It earlier denied similar claims. Its announcement on FDA approval for human tests follows recent news of a similar breakthrough involving brain implants by Swiss researchers. A paralysed man from the Netherlands was able to walk simply by thinking about it, thanks to a system of implants which wirelessly transmits his thoughts to his legs and feet. The boss of the company behind ChatGPT has said it has no plans to leave Europe. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman U-turned on a threat he made earlier this week to leave the bloc if it becomes too hard to comply with upcoming laws on artificial intelligence. The EU's planned legislation could be the first to legislate on AI, with the tech boss saying it was over-regulating, but he backtracked after widespread coverage of his comments. "We are excited to continue to operate here and of course have no plans to leave," he tweeted. The proposed law could require generative AI companies to reveal which copyrighted material have been used to train their systems to create text and images. Many in the creative industries accuse AI companies of using the work of artists, musicians and actors to train systems to imitate their work. But Mr. Altman is worried it would be technically impossible for OpenAI to comply with some of the AI's Act's safety and transparency requirements, according to Time magazine. At an event at University College London on Wednesday, Mr. Altman added he was optimistic AI could create more jobs and reduce inequalities. He also met Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the heads of AI companies DeepMind and Anthropic to discuss the technology's risks, from disinformation to national security, and even existential threats and the voluntary actions and regulation required to manage them. Some experts fear superintelligent AI systems could threaten humanity's existence. But Mr. Sunak said AI could positively transform humanity and deliver better outcomes for the British public, with emerging opportunities in a range of areas to improve public services. At the G7 summit in Hiroshima, the leaders of the US, UK, Germany, France, Italy, Japan and Canada agreed creating trustworthy AI must be an international endeavour. And before any EU legislation comes into effect, the European Commission aims to develop an AI pact with Google's parent company Alphabet. International cooperation is vital to regulating AI, according to EU Industry Chief Executive Thierry Breton, who met with Google Chief Executive Sundar Pichai in Brussels. Sundar and I agreed that we cannot afford to wait until AI regulation actually becomes applicable, and to work together with all AI developers to already develop an AI pact on a voluntary basis ahead of the legal deadline, Mr. Breton said. Silicon Valley veteran author and O'Reilly Media founder Tim O'Reilly said the best start would be mandating transparency and building regulatory institutions to enforce accountability. AI fear-mongering, when combined with its regulatory complexity, could lead to analysis paralysis, he said. Companies creating advanced AI must work together to formulate a comprehensive set of metrics that can be reported regularly and consistently to regulators and the public, as well as a process for updating those metrics as new best practices emerge. An engineering chief at Twitter says he is leaving the company a day after the launch of Ron DeSantis' US presidential campaign on the platform was hit with technical glitches. Vode DeBeery tweeted, "After almost 4 incredible years at Twitter, I decided to leave the nest yesterday." Mr. DeSantis' entry into the race for the White House was hit by problems as a Twitter livestream malfunctioned. More than 80% of the firm's workforce has been cut since Mr. Musk bought it. Mr. DeBeery did not specify why he had decided to leave Twitter, or whether it was relating to the problems with the DeSantis event on the platform. He did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Twitter did not provide a statement on Mr. DeBeery's behalf. Mr. DeBeery, who was the engineering lead for Twitter's growth organization, said in a statement he had experienced 2 distinct eras at the company before and after it was acquired by the multi-billionaire last year. In another post, Mr. DeBeery said the transition into Twitter's 2.0 was massive and rapid. He added, "To say it was challenging at the outset would be an understatement." However, Mr. DeBeery said working with Elon Musk has been highly educational, and it was enlightening to see how his principles and vision are shaping the future of this company. Issues with a Twitter livestream meant that an event to launch Mr. DeSantis' bid for the Republican presidential nomination got underway 20 minutes late. By the time Wednesday evening's Twitter talk had begun in earnest, hundreds of thousands of Twitter users had left the platform. The Florida governor is viewed as former President Donald Trump's chief rival to be their party's candidate in the 2024 general elections. Mr. Musk, who also runs car maker Tesla and rocket firm SpaceX, bought Twitter for $44 billion or £35.4 billion in October. Speaking to the BBC last month, he said that cutting the workforce from just under 8,000 people at the time he bought the firm to about 1,500 had not been easy. Since Mr. Musk took the reins out of Twitter, he has laid off thousands of employees, including engineers responsible for the site's operations and technical troubleshooting. Mr. DeSantis' team worked quickly to spin the technical stumbles, writing on Twitter that the announcement had broken the internet with so much excitement and posting a link to the campaign website. His press secretary Brian Griffin claimed the online event had raised $1 million in an hour. At one point, the Twitter event drew more than 600,000 listeners, according to Reuters news agency figures, but by its conclusion there were fewer than 300,000. Once the live stream began, Mr. DeSantis turned the conversation to his conservative credentials and touted his handling of the COVID-19 crisis in his state and anti-lockdown approach, applauded by many Republicans. Chinese hackers used stealthy malware to attack critical infrastructure on American military bases in Guam, says Microsoft and Western spy agencies. Experts say it's one of the largest known cyber espionage campaigns against the US. A key US military outpost, Guam's ports and air bases would be crucial to any Western response to a conflict in Asia. Beijing has called the Microsoft report highly unprofessional and disinformation. Together with the Five Eyes alliance comprising the intelligence agencies of the US, Australia, Britain, New Zealand and Canada, Microsoft published details of the malware on Wednesday. The Five Eyes initiative is a decades-old intelligence sharing agreement. The partners say they aim to educate critical infrastructure providers and corporate users on how to detect and remove the malware. Microsoft, which flagged the breach, says the malicious code was installed to spy on and disrupt communications infrastructure between the US and Asia during a future crisis. It targeted, among others, communications, manufacturing, utility and transportation sectors. The purpose was to maintain access to critical systems for as long as possible. The attack was carried out by China's state-sponsored cyber group, Volt Typhoon, and relied on living-off-the-land techniques, said the tech company. This involves hackers infiltrating local networks to modify their tools and issue commands while remaining largely undetected. Responding to queries at a Chinese Foreign Ministry press briefing, spokeswoman Mao Ning called the US the hacker empire and dismissed the report as having a serious lack of evidence chain. While the US and China regularly accuse each other of spying, the joint Five Eyes statement is notable, experts say. The fact that it's in a Five Eyes initiative, there's significant concern over what this attack might be a precursor to in terms of the intent behind it, and the sabotage element here, said Jamie Norton, a partner at restructuring and advisory firm McGrath Nicole. Mr. Norton, a former information security advisor to the Australian government, noted that Microsoft's analysis of the attack found no evidence that the Chinese hackers had used their access to Guam systems for any offensive attacks, but he added that finding could point to a broader campaign to exfiltrate and farm data over the long term in order to conduct sabotage operations in the future. Sony's given fans a glimpse of some big upcoming games at its first PlayStation showcase in well over a year. The livestream is usually reserved for console makers' most important crowd-pleasing releases. Hype going into the event was huge. Big productions were made, a Bloodborne remake, The Last of Us Part 3 and a Twisted Metal update among them. Spoiler, none of these turned out to be true, and the general reaction seemed to be underwhelmed. There was a lack of genuine first-party exclusives, and many of the PlayStation 5 games on display were already known about. but there were some highlights as well as the odd hut moment. Spider-Man 2. Save the best until last, Sony seemed to think so. It capped the presentation with 12 minutes of gameplay footage from its sequel to the 2018 PS4 hit. We saw Control switch between Peter Parker in a dark Venom suit, boasting new symbiote powers, and Miles Morales, who got his own PS5 launch game. The pair were seen swinging through New York in pursuit of Dr. Kirk Connors, aka the Lizard, while trying to avoid supervillain Kraven's henchman. Fans generally seemed impressed, excited by the ability to play as both characters, and the promise of a darker storyline, thanks to the new black suit. But the game's existence was already confirmed, and fans had been hoping for news of something new from a Sony studio. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Probably the worst kept secret of the night, rumours had been swirling that a remake of PlayStation 2 classic Metal Gear Solid 3 was on the cards. And when the brief trailer ended with a glimpse of Hero Solid Snake, it was finally confirmed. The game, which will also be on Microsoft's Xbox Series XS consoles, doesn't have a release date yet. Sony also confirmed that the first 3 Metal Gear Solid games will be released as the Master Collection Volume 1 later this year. There was no mention of a Metal Gear Solid 4 remaster long wished for by fans, but some suggested it might feature in a Volume 2. Some were concerned that series creator Hideo Kojima, who left developer Konami on bad terms, won't be involved in the re-releases. Another confirmed rumour, and the source of most memes, was Sony's new handheld device. Imagine a DualSense controller cut in half with an 8-inch LCD screen sandwiched between, and you've got Project Q. Sony promised more details in future, but said it would be capable of streaming PS5 games from your console. You can already do this via a phone or tablet and third-party control attachment, so lots were left wondering what's special about it. Because of its resemblance to Nintendo Switch and its less successful Wii U, the PSU, and PlayStation Switch, jokes came thick and fast. Having said that, some people said they might be interested in picking one up if the price yet to be confirmed was right. Alan Wake 2, Phantom Blade Zero, and another Final Fantasy XVI trailer got people excited, although the longed-for FF16 demo didn't appear as hoped, and the first look at Dragon's Dogma 2 was a welcome surprise, as it showed work on the sequel to the 2013 sleeper hit was well underway. Fans of indie games were well served with follow-ups to Journey and Night in the Woods on show, as well as Devolver Digital's The Plucky Squire. Resident Evil 4 Remake and Synapse on PSV R2, as well as the free Beat Saber upgrade that launched as the showcase went out, were also well received. One of the biggest complaints was the lack of true exclusive titles on display. Halo developer Bungie, recently bought by Sony, announced that it was reviving its 1994 franchise Marathon, but the game will appear on other platforms, and the phrase "not actual gameplay footage" earned its money on the night. Many of the titles featured in the showcase, Fair Games from Haven Studio and Firewalk Studios Concord, showed cinematic trailers but no gameplay. And taking up a chunk of the stream with a clip from the upcoming Gran Turismo movie didn't go down well, especially. The summer is usually the time for big gaming announcements, and there are still chances for companies to reveal big projects. US journalist Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Feast kicks off on the 8th of June and has promised 3 or 4 big reveals. Microsoft will have its own Xbox showcase on the 11th of June, and Nintendo usually lays on one of its direct streams before autumn, so don't expect those rumours to go away just yet. Okay, thank you very much for watching my live stream of the news as of the 28th of May 2023. This will be me signing off. I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to watch some of the other videos on the channel. It helps really support my efforts in becoming a YouTuber. Thank you.